Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Welcome back to another episode of the Chad Smith Podcast. My name is Chad Smith, and today is Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. And I'm joined today by my guest from California. Please welcome Spooky Morales. How's it going, man?
Hey, good morning. How you doing, Chad?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Filling in for Sonny today, who has a doctor's appointment.
Yeah,
So thank you for being here, man.
of course. Very glad to be here. Just still waking up a little bit.
Yeah, you got your West Coasters, I'm telling you.
Got my coffee.
Your coffee, gotta spell it right. C-A-W.
It's always got to have a W.
That's right. We have a really cool guest today, so before we bring him in, I just want to say hi to everybody. Cassie, I saw she was in here first today.
Yay.
Maverick was in second. And Enzo, how's it going, man? Good to see you. I don't think you ever sleep. Connor with Bigfoot and On, how's it going, dude? Got a good guest today. You're going to like him. Diesel Girl, how's it going? Enzo, I already got you. Taupe Nose. I remember seeing you over in Joey's channel. Dope Nose. And I think that is it. Oh, we got Bobby. Good morning, Bobby. Hope you got your coffee. All right, guys, we have a really cool guest today. I'm going to bring him up. We've got Jason Hewlett is a paranormal investigator and the manager of the Paranormal Network. His YouTube channel focuses on paranormal investigations, UFO news, Bigfoot mysteries, and myths and legends from around the world. You can find his YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Paranormal Network. So for the first time on the podcast, please welcome Jason Hewlett.
Hello, guys.
Hey, good morning, Jason.
How's it going, man?
Good. I got my coffee here too. 'Cause I only
Your
Yeah.
coffee. Yeah, I work midnights and I still come home and still make some coffee. I love it.
You have to. It's just part of the ritual, right? More than anything else, I think, at this point.
Ooh, and that's strong too.
There we go. That's good stuff.
I bought some type of Mexican, I can't remember what it's called. It's from Mexico though, and I just ground it right at the store, coarse ground, and then made it in the good old.
Nice.
You got to French press it. Like, that's the only way to drink coffee. As far as
Oh,
I'm
that one's
concerned,
cool
right?
looking.
Yeah. It's a stainless steel. It's bulletproof, I think, so no one can damage my coffee. I get to it. So,
Dude, they make bulletproof coffee.
well, I think they do, actually. I haven't
Yep.
tried it, but I usually get Black Rifle. So, and I really quite like that
That's
one.
a good one too.
That's a good coffee, right? And it supports
they're-
veterans as well. So I'm all about that.
Yes, it does. There's a
Absolutely.
there's a Carhartt store I go to that sells Carhartt and Red Wing boots and Stanley thermoses and all that stuff, and they also sell the Black Rifle coffee, and it's super good.
Oh yeah, I
A
can't go
little
wrong
expensive.
It is.
Expensive, but it does support the it does support the troops, you know.
But it's a good cause. So
That's right. First Floor Audio made it in. Man, he's all the way in where's he at? The UK?
Yeah, UK.
Yeah. So we got the whole world waking up drinking coffee.
that's awesome. Welcome
Yeah,
a whole
man.
world.
Welcome to the whole world. So, Jason, when did you get started into the paranormal stuff? Have you been doing this stuff since you were a kid?
Well, I've been interested in, like, most people, like, it's funny, like the whole YouTube thing came about sort of by accident. Because I started off is with an interest, like anyone, like I'm a paranormal investigator first. That's kind of how I got started into all this stuff, along with my colleague Pete Wren. But anyone that investigates it, you know, for a living, kind of thing, starts with an interest as a child, and it kind of just goes from there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I started, you know, having weird things happen to me as a kid, not really sure what that was. So it creates this interest in kind of understanding more. So you read about it, you go and research it, and next thing you know, you're kind of conducting your own sort of investigations on your own. And then come 2017, I finally kind of partnered up with a group called Vancouver Paranormal Society up here, which is one of the oldest, ghost hunting groups in North America, which was run by Pete. And I started investigating with them for a few years, and it just kind of snowballed from there. We kind of ended up leaving because we're both in the interior of British Columbia, creating our own group called Canadian Paranormal Foundation. And we were going to do like this podcast about where we would document our investigations. I have a friend of mine named John Fallon, who's goes by the sort of the nickname The Arrow. He have Arrow in the Head, which is a horror movie website, part of the Joe Blow movie network. They were getting big into YouTube. He heard I was doing a podcast, said, why don't you do a video show instead? So we started doing a video show called We Want to Believe, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And next thing I knew, they'd asked me to run this paranormal network that they were trying to create paranormal content and kind of corner that market. So that's kind of a Cliff Notes version of what brought me into running this channel and these shows, and then documenting even our investigations on YouTube, really.
Yeah.
So,
that's cool. So how long have you been into the YouTube side of it?
The YouTube side of it, the Paranormal Network launched beginning of 2021. And so I started managing it at about May of last year, sort of. But we were doing our show, We Want to Believe, since May of 2020. Like, we'd actually started filming our investigations, because that's what we do, right before the pandemic hit. So we kind of shot some stuff. The pandemic hit, we were shut down. And then we kind of were just slowly putting things together until we could kind of get back out again after the initial lockdown up here in Canada. So it's been almost 2 years of doing the YouTube stuff now.
Okay. Yeah, I've only been into this for, what has it been, like 4 or 5 months, I think.
Okay.
So I'm pretty new into the YouTube side of things. And I'm
it's
actually
a whole new ballgame. Like, it's so different.
For sure.
I did live radio for years, and it just adds a whole other element to what you're doing, right?
Oh, you did live radio?
Yeah, before. Yeah.
Nice.
So, which
That's
I'm
cool.
used to something like this, where we're just going to sit and chat, except now we can look at each other. Like, that's the difference, right? So
Yeah.
It's the only difference. Yeah, I was going to ask you too, because I thought you had a great radio voice. I was going to ask you if you had been in radio.
Oh yeah, no, I did. Thank you. I did kind of a pop culture show called We Came from the Basement, from about 2010 to last June. And so it was started, campus radio, and then became like, podcasts, and then it became like primetime radio for a few years, towards the end there. So, and I did news as well. So yeah.
College radio, I remember that. I did that in San Diego State at KCR. It was so funny. Back in the days of vinyl.
Oh god, yeah, no, this place, it was past the vinyl days, but they still used vinyl because that's all they could afford, because it's campus radio. It's campus radio, right? And some CDs, and it's fun. That was a blast. Like, 10 o'clock on a Friday night, not quite sober, trying to do radio.
Very few rules.
Yeah, very few rules, right?
Almost no one listening.
Yeah, so it was fun. College radio is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Sounds a lot like our shows on Fridays. Not many people listening, not too many rules.
Having some beers as well.
Yeah. Not too many viewers. Yeah, we're lucky if we
having a
get
little
past.
trouble with my camera, man. I'll be right back.
I was okay. I think everyone's having technical issues. Like, you say that I'm not cutting out, but both Jason and Spooky are both kind of cutting out on my end, so it might be me. But I don't know. We'll keep going until it crashes.
Exactly. Just like
all the way
radio.
to the scene of the crash, right?
It's just unbelievable technology.
Mm-hmm. It's a tease. It almost works.
Most of the time.
It's just right there. And if we could just have it that 10% better, it'd be perfect. So you get into, you said mostly paranormal, but a little bit of Bigfoot too, huh?
Well, yeah, like we kind of cover, like, because with our group, with Canadian Paranormal, being in the interior of British Columbia, I mean, there's lots of, we don't have like the history that you get in Eastern Canada, where the first settlers were, where you get like, 100-year-old style buildings and lots of hauntings. We get a lot of hauntings out here, but where we are, we're kind of smack dab in the middle of Sasquatch territory, because it works up that whole West Coast, Pacific Northwest channel where Sasquatch is believed to exist, right? And if you like around where I live, there's been sightings here, out at the Shuswap, and even like about an hour and a half away at Harrison Hot Springs, where it's just like a huge they have the Bigfoot caves, they call it. You can kind of tour them and visit. So we've done a couple of Squatch hunts as a team and documented them on We Want to Believe. And I know people who've had sightings. I've had experiences I've in the woods that I can't explain, that I find quite, that tie into Sasquatch mythology, especially if you believe like the indigenous peoples. It kind of makes sense in their beliefs of it being a very spiritual kind of being. So yeah, we touch on Bigfoot. We have a whole show called That Bigfoot Show, which touches on Bigfoot with Taylor James Johnson. He's out of San Antonio, Texas. And so he does, the whole Southern Bigfoot, skunk ape.
That's cool.
Kind of stuff. He ties on that, but he covers everything, even Bigfoot in comics and Bigfoot in movies and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I was checking your channel out, and I like how everything's separated. How you have a different show for each, like each day has a different category, like UFOs one day and Sasquatch another. That's pretty cool.
We try to break it down. It's a hard topic to. Well, there's so many different subjects within the paranormal. We're trying to nail them all because I'm interested in all of them, like UFOs. I've never seen, I think, a UFO. I'm not 100% sure, right? I guess it's now any unidentifiable thing in the sky could count.
Yeah.
Lake monster, like we try to touch on lake monsters, not in a specific show, but through our various programming. It's just fascinating. I mean, and you can go on forever. Like you can get into like, remote viewing, dream telepathy, you name it. Like it's all on the table nowadays, right? And all very much in the public consciousness, which I think says something about the world we've been living in for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's what we're starting to find out. Especially what Josh just said here. It's what I was thinking. I think he's reading my mind this morning. But yeah, I think everything connects. It seems like everything in this, the whole umbrella of the paranormal, it seems like there's something going on that connects everything together. And, I've had it described to me too as like the Force from Star Wars, how it's like this web that just holds everything together. And it's kind of how it feels the more you look into stuff like this.
Well, it's kind of the more research I've done and the more people I've talked to these last few years, that's how it's starting to feel. I mean, it kind of ties into like John Keel, who wrote the Mothman Prophecies, which they made a movie out of with Richard Gere and stuff like that. He was kind of becoming of the belief system that he called them ultra terrestrials. So they're creatures that come from a parallel dimension, and they've been here since the dawn of time. Like we call it paranormal because we don't understand it yet, but I think it's all very much a natural phenomenon attached to this planet. We're just trying to make sense out of it. And what he sort of hypothesized is that these are beings that have been with us since the beginning, and they kind of interact with us, and they've adapted as we've adapted, which is why, like back in the ancient times, they referred to UFOs as chariots of the gods, right? Like the Egyptian time, that's how they interpreted it. And then in the Victorian era, that they were more like these airships, you know what I mean? Like the air dirigibles. And now they look like stealth fighters. Like it's just, they kind of adjust to match our consciousness, kind of thing like that.
Yeah. When do you think, because that's something I haven't really looked into either, is when do you think it went from normal to being paranormal, like in the human timeline? When did it go from like meditation being like a normal practice everyone did, and reading the stars and talking to the gods and being spiritual like that? Do you know about when it went from just that was just a normal thing to being a paranormal thing?
I think it started like there's a really good book called The Occult by Colin Wilson, and he kind of researched as far back as he could think of. And what he kind of figured is that it was a lot more normal before we became civilized. Do you know what I mean? Like once we started, like when we were out running the plains and existing in small groups, it was normal. You had to kind of rely on being in tune with the world around us and all this weird stuff to survive, right? Like you were a lot more reliant on your intuition and your instinct, and reading like the environment and just your gut feeling in order to survive a saber-toothed tiger attack or avoid being attacked. And then I think once we started kind of congregating in large groups and becoming like creating whole societies and cities and becoming industrialized, once that noise started, we started not paying attention as much. And that's where I think we started thinking it as paranormal, as opposed to just being the norm. And I think enough people are with, it's like all that Matrix analogy, are waking up enough to realize that it's still there and it's still with us. And they're kind of starting, especially when you have something like the last 2 years happen, you're starting to kind of wanting to get back in tune with that, because what we've been existing in can't just be it. It doesn't make sense that this is the whole point of life. And we're just here to kind of, go to school, get a job, get married, have kids, do something you don't really like your whole life and die. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot more going on. And I think people are starting to kind of want that in their lives. So I mean, in the last few years, people have seen more UFOs. They've had more paranormal encounters, more contents coming out about the paranormal. I think it's just becoming, it can't all just be for marketing purposes. I think just people are starting to tune in again. Because they've slowed down a bit.
Right. Yeah, I can't speak for everyone else, but like for me, it was right at the start of, well, a little bit was when the Tic Tac UFO incident happened and those videos came out, and then the government confirmed that they were real. That's when my interest was sparked. And then when COVID hit and there was nothing to do but sit at home and look up videos and try to figure out a new hobby to get into, that's when I was really digging into it and finding these YouTube channels that were talking about it and reading up on the different sightings from the past and Roswell, and that's when everything just started unraveling. So that makes total sense that's when everybody else was kind of tuning in also.
Yeah, I think so. People had time and they weren't as busy, you know what I mean? Because for a couple months, at a time, you were stuck at home. And they hadn't figured out at the beginning how to, pivot everybody so they could work from home, et cetera, et cetera. And I think, a lot of people just started paying attention. You heard like UFO reports go up, reports of hauntings in homes go up because people were home and they were paying attention to what was going on, right? And I think it's something that's around us all the time, even right now as we're talking, and we just aren't always in tune with it because we're distracted or whatever. But if you sometimes even at my house, like at night, if I kind of just stop for a while and I'm reading a book, and my wife's gone to bed and my kid's asleep and I'm just the only one there, you just start feeling something different, and it almost feels like you're not alone, like in the house at that one particular time.
Yeah, that's interesting how I'm having like this mental process in my head right now. How you said that when it went from the normal to paranormal is kind of when we went from uncivilized to civilized, and then a pandemic hits and we all go from civilized to uncivilized again. And everyone becomes more interested in the paranormal.
Yeah, and it's funny. I never thought of it quite that way either. That becoming uncivilized. I thought it was shutting up for 5 minutes. But you're right. Things got crazy and people started acting different. You know what I mean? And it's just people were panicking, and it became a survival situation again.
Yeah.
It's
almost like whenever it's like uneasy or not the way it's supposed to be, we look to what else is out there. Where else can we find answers?
I'm telling you, it's the greatest test of our time, man. This is it.
Yeah, you've said it a couple times, and now I'm believing it, man.
Well, at least for our generation, right? Like we haven't had like a war or a Great Depression or anything like that. I mean, I grew up in the 70s, so I'm older. And I remember when we still were worried about getting nuked out of existence, right? And it was a very different times. But there's a whole generation that say was born in the 80s and 90s that had nothing bad happen that impacted them on a day-to-day basis, right? And I think that you get cocky and you start to think that pardon my French, shit doesn't stink, and nothing can touch you. And then this came around and just went, guess what? Like anytime something could come up, and that's kind of the world I grew up in. And I think it's been a good wake-up call that's challenged people. I always hoped that it would make us get better, but I think in many ways it's made us get worse because people just wanted to go back to that comfort zone that we had, right? They didn't want to evolve and change and kind of maybe rethink how the world was working, but it's a whole other topic than the paranormal kind of thing.
I just think it's tested us at every facet of our being, how we work together and how we treat each other. And, we're on every level of our lives and society, it's just testing us to see, actually, we're testing ourselves, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you going to be the best possible person you can be? You know what I mean? And maybe learn from it and get better at it and maybe appreciate life more, or are you not just going to want to take, clean out the meat section of your grocery store just for yourself because you need 300 people in steaks, to get through a pandemic, that was ridiculous. Anyways.
Yeah, that was crazy. Very crazy. I couldn't believe when I walked into my little farm town grocery store and It was completely empty. I'm like, come on, what's happening right now?
Right?
I
Like,
thought everybody in my town had a little bit more sense than that. There's only like 5,000 people here.
no, unfortunately, I don't think people do, right? Or at least a certain percentage of the population doesn't, which I think is
Yeah.
deplorable, right?
Yep.
So
That's
we
when
had
they
that
started
happen.
figuring out how everybody was, who their true self was.
Yeah, big time, big time.
Yeah, it's been a crazy couple of years that hasn't really flown. I mean, it seems like it's kind of flown by when you look back to where it started, but
Well, I think
it's
it'll be a
been
blip in our radar in a few years. You know what I mean? It'll be something that we kind of look back at and go,
Oh.
"Wow!" But it was, in the history of us, it's going to seem very short.
I hope you're right, man.
I
Yeah.
hope so.
That's my fingers crossed. Just to be because as I say that,
Yeah.
but it feels like that's what's going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah. Spooky. I was listening to R. Keith Andrews' his latest episode on his YouTube channel, and he was talking about how he thinks that we're coming out of this now, and that the last one that happened 700 years ago, was he talking the Great Plague or something? He was talking about Black Plague. He was talking about. It took like 5 or 6 years to clean up. So he's like, well, we're on the right track. It's only taken us a couple or 2 or 3 years. So we're doing better than they were. Like,
Well, I think
saying
part of it. Sorry, part of it. I think we went through the one. They could look back at 2018, 1918 or whatever it was. That one, and they've science
Oh,
has
the
evolved
Spanish
so
flu.
much more, right? Like I read that as soon as this hit, they were already working on the vaccine because they had the formula from previous vaccines, right? Whereas before they
Right.
didn't. So I think they said 2 years when this happened. It'd probably take 2 years, and we're almost at that benchmark now. So I think
yeah.
we've just evolved enough,
Yeah.
scientifically to deal with it better.
Hopefully people are just getting to the point where they're just done arguing. Like maybe they could just be
Right?
just tired of it. I mean, I'm tired of listening to people argue. So I would just hope that people would just start getting sick of actually doing the arguing.
Yeah, it's divided people a lot. And I think that's going to go on. Again, it's a different topic, but I think that's going to go on for a long time. I think there's been a divide in people and our society, and you're starting to see the two different sides of how we kind of operate, right? Like, yeah.
For sure.
But to bring it back to the paranormal side of things, and what people are seeing is like you said earlier, Jason, the mind is opening, consciousnesses are expanding, and I think that people are just starting to feel that there's a lot more that we should learn about this life that we're living that we haven't been taught or told. And I think that it's happening. I think more and more people are starting to understand that there is a lot more to living and being a human being than just what you said earlier, paying bills and stress until you die.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think because there was a time we wouldn't be having this conversation publicly on a show, except around Halloween. Do you know what I mean? Like it just
Exactly.
didn't happen. Like it was the October of every year you could talk about this stuff, but otherwise forget it. And I was a mainstream journalist for a decade, and my credibility would have been shot if I told them that for fun on the side I go and investigate ghosts on weekends. You know what I mean? It just wouldn't. I wouldn't have had a journalism career.
That's right.
Now it wouldn't matter. Like everyone's open to talking about it. People are willing to talk about the whole possibility of talking about psychic phenomenon and being in tune with like angels and spirits and guides, and people are accepting it as just how you live, right?
I mean, 2 years ago, you heard about things like consciousness in a show like Ancient Aliens or something, and people thought it was just something that was way out, too far out there, too wooey.
Yeah. Yep.
Now it's like the regular on the table conversation.
It is, and there's still the woo stuff, but the woo stuff just seems even more woo. You know what I mean? Like, but the fact is, people are like actually going, well, maybe that is possible, right? Like this whole metaverse concept, that's being popular in like the Marvel movies and stuff like that. But
It's all coming true.
Yeah, science is looking at it seriously, that as a possibility, and I think that's a possible explanation for a lot of the phenomenon that people are experiencing. I mean, maybe they aren't ghosts. Maybe we're just the veil's thin between dimensions of different parts, and that's when you're interacting with someone from a different dimension. Maybe that's how you can explain how Bigfoot tracks just disappear in the middle of a snow-covered field. He just blipped back, to where he comes from. Skinwalker Ranch is like a prime example of how that could be possible. I've done investigations where we're running a spirit box, and one of the things you do is like, just please tell us your name. And so we're using the spirit box, like, please tell us your name. And my voice comes back, my voice saying Jason to us.
Oh,
Really?
nice.
And that was a mind-blowing moment. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes, it would be.
Did you hear that? And Peter's like, that's you. I'm just, and I'm
Wow.
getting goosebumps now. Like, you're just kind of, who's not to say I didn't just touch base with Jason from, Earth 274. Like, it's anything is now
Oh,
possible. And the thing is that I'm not saying that and you're going, you're full of crap. You're like, oh yeah, that could be you know what I mean? Like, that could be true.
Dude, you are speaking
Mhm.
my language. I mean, this is exactly what we're talking about. How everything connects together, how it always applies to our, our lives. It's amazing. Awesome. I
Mhm.
love it.
Oh
It
yeah.
is, and I feel blessed that I can spend my day like that because I do this YouTube. This is like my job. I do this for a living, and that I get to do this every day,
That's
and then to go out and
awesome.
investigate. But it's part of what my life, and it's open. I'm glad that it's happened because even to however long it goes on for, because nothing ever lasts forever. But the fact is, like, it's just to have this opportunity and how it's sort of changed my worldview and the research I'll do forever. You know what I mean? Like, it's yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and I think it's important. I think it's an important topic for our time and our species, and I'm glad it's in the public consciousness that we can go on a show like this and talk about it, and you're gonna have people interact and ask questions and just be accepting of it.
Amazing. Love it.
Yeah, and I think it's on a fast track too, because like you said, this was just a couple years ago. We weren't talking about this kind of stuff, and now
No,
it's everywhere.
it's everywhere, and people are talking about it. And you can be at work, and a diverse group of people at the table, and someone will bring it up, and everyone just jumps in. They don't just go, "Oh, you're crazy." Like, there's still a few people there's people that are always going to say that, but I think it's just because they don't want to look at it. It scares them. The thought that because one thing it means is that you have less control over your life than you think you do.
Yes.
Um, right? Because there's other forces at play out there that
Hmm.
you're interacting with and that are influencing you. So, and that scares people. And I think that's even with the pandemic. That's the big thing. The reason they wanted it to go back to the way it was is because they thought they had more control back then. They didn't realize that some bug that you can't even see come around and shut the planet down.
Yeah.
Because if that can happen, all cards are off the table.
Exactly. Yeah, and
So
that might even be why the government's kind of freaked out too about not wanting the secret to get out because of a fear of loss of control. Once the truth gets out there that there's a higher power than our almighty government that we can talk to and that can answer to us, it's like, huh? Well, why do I need to keep paying taxes then? If
right?
this is the case here, then yeah.
We don't need taxes.
Oh man, now we're in trouble. You brought that up.
This channel's really getting shut down now. It was nice knowing you.
But I think that's part.
Um,
I think if the government, and I'm sure the government, if you depends what books you read and what research you do. The government obviously has to have some kind of understanding. They involved remote viewing in the CIA as a legitimate thing during the Cold War, and I think governments that do that are kind of they're more in tune than they're letting on,
mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
But
I'm
what do you think?
sure.
What do you think, Jason, about all these people that think that the government is going to be the ones that give us disclosure and tell us about all the answers to what we're looking for?
I mean, I think if they do, I think it's going to come out one way or another. I doubt the reason why they're talking about disclosure and the government did what it did in June with the UFO thing is they want to give the impression that they have that control to do it. I think, and this is no expert on this kind of stuff, but I don't think they do. They like to think they do. It's like any government, right? Like the if you want to talk about a cover up at Roswell, if indeed there was one, they wanted to control that situation, right? They wanted to control the message, and we've dealt with that a lot in media. They want to control everything, but I think it's going to come out whether they want it to or not eventually. In some way. I mean, and like there's like sites like the Black Vault that try to obtain these documents and get them out there for people.
Mhm.
Jeremy Corbell, Luis Elizondo, all those guys who was a part of a government machine, trying to get the message out there. So I don't think they're gonna. And if they do finally reveal it, it's because their hand's been forced. I think, if that makes sense, like because someone else is going to drop the ball, drop the whole document, and
Yeah.
they decide they'll jump a little bit ahead, right, to try to beat the punch to make it look like they're in control of the situation. But I don't think they are. And if you're dealing with something like this, how could you be?
Right.
I lean more towards the drip disclosure concept that it's already been happening, that disclosure has been happening for a very, very long time. It's just little bits of pieces here and there. And finally, it's just coming. I think that the big tests that we talked about that started a couple years ago, I think that it's all part of it. and that it's being accelerated because of that.
Oh, I'm sure. Like, because I mean, they didn't, and no one took, this pandemic seriously for the first few months. You know what I mean? And if you believe, going back, there was signs of COVID in Canada back in November of 2019, so it was already out. I think they were just trying to hoping it wouldn't go the way that it went. So yeah, I
Mhm.
think that forced their hand, and it was interesting that 3 months in, like sort of June, July of 2020, they said, well, in June of 2021, we're going to tell you something about UFOs. You know what I mean? Like, they talked about that date a year ahead of time. So they knew what they were going to do and
Yeah.
what they wanted to say, right? So I think, yeah, once that happened, and it just seemed to be kind of the push.
Right. Cat's out of the bag now.
Yeah.
Josh from the chat had a couple questions for you.
Okay.
He says, Jason, have you looked at the blind experiments with DMT or
No, I
John
haven't.
Wheeler's participatory universe theory?
I have not, but I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah,
Where
this
would I
one
be able to
sounds-
find out more?
I actually have not heard of this one either. The blind experiment with DMT. Josh, do you know where we could find that? And then he had another question. People having identical entities in DMT trips and oh, okay. So he was just
Okay.
telling us people having identical entities. Yeah, I've heard of that happening when people are doing like an ayahuasca, whatever you want to call that, like when they go out to the woods with a shaman and do the whole ayahuasca trip
Oh,
thing.
okay. Yep.
Where they'll actually go into the meditation and everyone will see the same thing. Like, instead of it just being like one person sees triangles, the other person sees cubes.
Oh, okay. So they have like a joint. It was almost like a joint
Look-
hallucinatory experience. Like, so everyone's seeing exactly the same stuff at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, that I have heard about too, and that's big. Like up here in Canada, in the Indigenous population, like our First Nations, like they do that all the time. That's part of their whole vision quest. Spirituality. It's very common. I haven't done anything that way. I think that'd be fascinating to try it. Like, just
Yeah,
to
I
see
haven't
what
looked
happens.
into that either, but that sounds awesome. I mean, if humans can communicate, it's funny that we think that it's like an impossible thing, but you can have a cell phone and a Wi-Fi router talk to each other and you can't see the signal in between the two.
Yeah,
And that happens every day. And if that's really just sound waves, then all we would have to be able to do is somehow create a wave, like a frequency with our brains. And I know there's already been work done as far as research for that too. Couldn't tell you who's doing the research or where it's being done. I just know that I've heard podcasts before talk about how that is being looked into right now. So the fact that we could have like some type of antenna at the back of our brain, like the third eye, and then that's how we would communicate wirelessly with each other and with the universe. So yeah, I think if there's more work being done on that, that would be really cool to find out. We can just text and email each other without typing on a phone.
well, that's something with meditation that people talk a lot about too. It's just tuning into that wavelength, right? Like people who have like near-death experiences talk about communicating with whatever the beings are as just without talking. It's telepathic. People say they've had telepathic conversations with Bigfoot. That's how aliens speak to us. You know what I mean? During alien encounters. So I think it's just one more of those things. And I'm sure that's where, when you just get a gut feeling about something, a person or a place, and it kind of turns out to be right. I think that's kind of what that is. That's just your intuition, at work. So it's just harnessing that wavelength of your intuition that we could actually just then communicate, right? I think that kind of makes sense to me, because you just know stuff. I mean, when you go into a place and you just know something bad happened there, like you can feel it, right? It's just a sense of dread or wrong or sadness for no reason. You step out the door and it goes away like instantaneously. Like I've had that happen. And I think that's just part of that ability to communicate with whatever is around you and be in tune with it. I think, that's the thing too that we lost touch with once we became more civilized, right?
Yeah. Man, do you have a theory as to why that correlates? Why getting more civilized would have us lose touch with? I mean, it just seems like something that we should not have lost the ability to be in tune with. It's just, the more I think about it, it's like almost like a superpower that we would have. And
Well, it is. I think we didn't do it on purpose. I think just like you look at your day-to-day existence, like you're just distracted. Like when they invent this junk,
yeah.
you know, you're just people are just looking at it, all the
Mhm.
time, and it's just a way of distracting you. I think if anyone can do it, all you got to do, and that's why they say that going out in nature is so good for you.
Yeah.
You leave your phone in the truck, you go for a walk in the woods for a few hours, all that noise goes away, and you start to kind of you feel better. Your
Grounded.
mood calms, and I think that you start then just to dial into stuff, right? But I think once you dial in, some people can't handle that. That just freaks you out. Like, whoa, I'm feeling things I shouldn't be feeling. I don't feel it all the time. What's going I've been in the woods, staying at a cabin, and one minute everything's fine, and the next minute there's the most intense feeling of dread I've ever felt. That's like, you need to get out of here. And I think it's just your sense warning you something's nearby that could possibly be a danger. And so just go inside, and lock the door.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were on the plains, 500 years ago, you would just be like, oh, something's there, find a cave. You know what I mean? And just get out of the way. Like, and I think that's all it is. But when you have that experience, it can panic somebody because you're not used to it. Because in the city, we don't hear it. There's lights, there's noise. You've got the Wi-Fi signals, you've got cars and traffic and trains, and it's just, and people, and you're just not paying attention. I think that's all it comes down to. We just stop paying attention because we're distracted by everything else, and you're working and you're trying to pay your bills and you got all this stuff going on, your kid's soccer practice, it's just, you're too busy.
It's brilliant, man. You're hitting it right on the knob. I love it.
Thank you.
It's my jam.
Woo! Got a good one.
And I think if you stop doing that, that's when you start noticing the paranormal, which I think we just call it para because we haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that we can figure out. Just like you said, when we shut out the outside noise, spend some time with ourselves, and see that there's a lot of answers right here. We just have to tap into it. I love it.
Yeah.
Material reality, toxins, addiction, and disconnect from the source.
Exactly, right? Like that's, I think, exactly it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that hits it right on. Yeah, just the new material reality that started, it's like the goal of humanity changed when we went from hunter-gatherers to like an industrial age. It's like our goal changed, and like all of our objectives changed. So I can see how that would go from paranormal to what we have now.
Oh yeah, and
like,
I think it was by accident, right? You start industrializing, people start living in places, you got to pay to live there, so you need a job. So you know what I mean? Like this whole system came up, and then the
It's
people
all part of the capitalist world.
Yeah. And once the capitalists and the head people started making all the money, you don't want to give that up, right? Like you just don't. So you want to kind of encourage that system. It's just the way it went. And I mean, I don't think there's any right. I mean, I'm not saying we should all just give up and knock all our cities down and go back out into the sticks. But I think
it's just about us understanding our place right now and why it is the way we is and why we've been living this way. And the material world, how many things can I buy to make myself happy? To fill that hole of something missing in life.
And that what's missing is being in tune with what life's all about and what's happening around it. That's all it is. And you can buy all the smartphones and widescreen televisions you want. You're never going to fill that hole.
Oh, I love it.
Right? You're just not.
Yep.
And I love my home theater system. Don't get me wrong, but it has a time and a place, right? Like,
exactly.
It doesn't make me happy. I just enjoy watching movies on it and getting the family around it, But I mean, that's not the point. Things aren't the point. It's experiences and connections with others and connecting with the world around us that always brings, I know, me the most joy. And I mean, I love going on a ghost hunt and sitting in the old buildings or being invited into someone's home with Phenomenon and sitting there quietly. And that's when you have your experience, when you sit there quietly, just listening and paying attention and kind of touching what's happening and bringing answers to these people who are sometimes very scared about what's happening in their homes because they don't understand it.
Right.
That's right.
Because it's just trying to make contact with them, and then their day-to-day reality is shattered by this. So I think, but it's fascinating. It brings me like the most joy, like just to connect that way and see it happen and try to help these people understand what's happening.
Right. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Just trying to get that voice, get the opinions out there. Well, get our opinions out there and try to see what people can do with them. Hopefully,
as far as your investigations, Jason, what are some of the highlights of your most recent investigations that you think the audience would get a kick out of?
Well, I think without giving too many specifics, because some of them, if it's a residential investigation we're doing, there's very much a confidentiality agreement because these are people's lives, right? But I can talk about some for sure. And I know, like the one I mentioned, hearing my own voice come back on a spirit box, that was pretty profound. We had another where we've been there a couple of times. We're going to go a third, where this woman and it's a single mom with some kids in a townhouse. They've had these experiences for years. When they first moved in, they'd been unpacking. They'd put all their totes down into the basement in a corner away from the living room, and she kind of came upstairs, and all the totes were in the living room again, stacked one inside the other. And so somehow they had moved from downstairs to the living room on their own somehow.
Oh.
So we were called in, and we've been investigating there for a while. And we had the last time me and a colleague of mine, Mike Stewart, were there, we were in the basement where she's seen, shadows and stuff like that, which is very common. And we asked for a response, a knock, and from upstairs, so 3 floors above, there was this bang that went through the whole house. We all heard it. We picked it up on the camera. We picked it up on the recorders. So that was interesting. And then most recently, we were at a house in a residential neighborhood where this family's been having these experiences, and nothing happened for a good hour and a half, right? And then one of our REM pods, and that's a device that you put on a floor or a shelf, and it lights up if there's movement within a very close vicinity. Like, you could, if this coffee cup was it, I'd have to pretty much be like this to set it off. We were in the dining room. The REM pod was in one of the bedrooms. Suddenly we hear it go off. So it makes like a bzzz sound. So we were in there, so we go and look, and it was actually physically knocked over.
Whoa.
Yeah, which was crazy. And there's the one animal, the dog, was outside. You know what I mean? Like, so there's nothing that could have knocked it over. The kids weren't there. It was just myself, another investigator, Olivier, and the mom. And then in the other kids' room, things started to happen. Like the kids' watch started to make a noise. There was a baby Yoda that would move. So we set it up where we could record it, and then it would actually respond to what we wanted it to. Could you move, please? And it would start to move and do the baby Yoda sounds. And could you stop? It would stop.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff that lately we've been experiencing. There's a street light, which I'm not 100% sold on the street light yet. I got to run a camera on it for a good amount of time. But we would look out the window and it would be off across from the house. And so it was like, well, could you turn on, please? Because she would say it would respond to them when they'd walk under it. So could you turn on, please? And then the light came on. And then would you turn off? And it would turn off. And it would do that a few times through the night. Like, we just randomly checked to see what was going on. And then when we were leaving, packed up, loaded all the gear in the truck, we're getting ready to go, and the light was on. And Olivier goes, just on her whim, he's like, could you turn off? And it winked out on us. It went out. And that was just kind of like, okay, like that's interesting. That's really cool.
Wow.
Which suggests, if the light is a part of the actual phenomenon and not just this malfunctioning street light, that whatever it was not contained to the house, which is very much an old Aboriginal theory, is that it's more tied to the land, right? So you build a subdivision on a chunk of land, anyone could experience phenomenon, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Who
so that's
knows
a
what was
couple
there
things
before?
recently, which was crazy.
That's cool.
Yeah. And that doesn't happen very often. Like, I mean, the fact we've had a few of those recently, I find quite interesting, because usually you're just limited to like an EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. You pick up like a word or something and tells response here and there. Like, you'll be happy to get one of those in the course of an entire investigation if you're lucky. But for some reason lately, we've had multiple things happening during the course of, a 3-4 hour investigation kind of thing, which I find quite fascinating, and unrepeated visits. So,
Yeah,
and I don't know what that means. Why?
Is that like a dangerous thing? Because I know there's a lot of people that say, I've heard how especially like a Ouija board. Like, if you're gonna sit there and play with a Ouija board, you're opening up like a portal, and you're allowing whatever to come in. So is that something? I mean, how would you get started if, say, I've never done any kind of investigating before, and I wanted to do something for a weekend, like a Saturday paranormal investigation? Is that something I could just jump into, or do I need to prepare myself for something like that? I would,
because when I first started, I started doing stuff on my own. And that's kind of when I would have the most frightening experiences because I didn't know what I was doing. I think it really, I mean, and as an example, and it's a classic one. One of the first places I'd ever investigated on my own was a place called Tronquil Sanitarium. And it was an old mental institution and tuberculosis clinic that they shut down in the 80s when they deinstitutionalized that whole system, which was a mistake in my mind because they just let them all out on the street. You know what I mean? Which is not good for them, you know, at all. They're not getting their medication, etc. But then, of course, a place like that suddenly becomes the urban legend place in the community, right? People start talking about all the weird stuff that happened there and all this. So I remember going out and investigating. I brought a friend of mine at the time named Donna. We went out in the afternoon and just wandering around, just trying to find stuff that would happen, not knowing what we were doing. And we were down in a tunnel system because being up in Canada, the winters can get pretty severe. So to move patients and supplies from building to building, they built tunnels.
Ooh.
We were down in the tunnels. Nothing. Oh, they're creepy. They're super creepy.
That's so creepy.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're going through there with flashlights and nothing happened. But I remember coming out into a laundry facility. We was like, well, it's time to go. And we're deciding, well, do we go back from above ground or should we go back through the tunnels? We decided we'll go back through the tunnels just in case something more happened. And literally, we'd just been through this door. There's no airflow. There's nothing. I grabbed the door. I pulled it open. I got it open about like this far. And something pulled back with enough force. Like I'm 6'1" in my 190s that I was pulled off my feet and hit the door.
Really?
And then Donna screamed and ran, and I wasn't too far behind her because I wasn't playing around with that. And I've only had stuff like that happen when I didn't know what I was doing and I had no understanding. So if you wanted to be an paranormal investigator, you find a team that already does it with people who know what they're doing. That's like I joined Vancouver Paranormal. I worked with like Pete Wren, who has been doing this all over the world. Like he's from the UK, he's investigated all over the world. He has like 30 years experience now. And you work with those people who know what they're doing, learn the right equipment to use, how it works, how it doesn't work, you know, what's reliable, what's not about it, and just learn from them. And you're it's a perfectly safe and fine thing to do. You know, I've had stuff swear at me, and we had like a small toy hammer go flying off a shelf, but that's the extent of most of it.
Okay.
Right? Like I haven't been pulled in any more doors for one thing. Right. Man. And I think it's just being smart. And the only bad Ouija experience I had was before I knew what I was doing. Otherwise, it's just another method of communication. Right.
Okay.
Literally, that's all it is. But you got to use it right.
Yep.
And a lot of people have different views on it. Right. And people will tell you don't even be a ghost paranormal investigator because you're going to summon demons and you're going to go to hell and all that. And that comes down to more of a religious belief system than anything else, which is a whole other topic.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So
your guys' signal's not dropping out at all, huh?
No, I've been good.
Weird. I might drop out and come back in for a second because you guys are freezing for some reason. It's never happened before. So Spooky, I think I'm gonna drop for a second, come back in.
Oh yeah, no problem, man. Go ahead. Do what you gotta do.
Be right back, guys.
And then there were two.
Exactly right. One down. Who will be the last person standing?
Oh man, I had a dollar for every time this happened.
Well, right. That's just part of technology.
Yeah. Any better,
it's
Chad?
It's already better. That was weird. All I did was close the browser out and restarted it.
Sometimes it's all it takes, right? It's like that old IT joke. Just turn it off and on.
Literally all
the problems, right?
That's literally all we do. Every time we have a problem, we just close the browser and come back in. And it's fine. It's so strange.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Why didn't you work the first time?
Maybe that's what Mother Earth is doing.
Well, I was going to say maybe it's like spirits trying to mess with our conversation. Like who knows?
Right. So Jason, what do you have coming up on your?
Go ahead, Chad.
Oh, we were still talking about. Were you still talking about something else?
No. I'm done.
Oh, okay. I was just going to ask Jason what he's got coming up on his channel, like what they're working on right now.
Because we've got every Friday we drop a cryptid campfire video podcast, and they've been doing podcasts for a few years now, and they tackle Sasquatch and all the different monsters kind of thing. So every Friday we got that. On Monday there's a new We Want to Believe coming out, and it's part 2 of our investigation into the woods, which is a follow-up to our Bigfoot investigations from last year, because we were out last year looking for Bigfoot. It's funny because Peter doesn't really believe in Bigfoot, and so he brought all of his ghost hunting gear out, and we did a spirit box session. And as soon as we turned the spirit box on, in the middle of nowhere, the dark and everything like that, we picked up "Help Me," the male voice saying "Help me." And when we did our line of questioning, we got an intelligence response to a name identifying itself as Robert. And so we never really resolved that then. So we went back out last summer to film a bunch of episodes of trying to figure out who Robert was. And so part 1 came out last month and part 2 comes out on Monday, where we try to follow up and get some answers as to who Robert is by doing an investigation. We kind of tie a bit into missing 411 phenomena and stuff like that with that one, and a little bit of Bigfoot.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so that was pretty cool. So that's coming up on Monday, and then we just got a regular rotation. We're doing something on the Jersey Devil on our Mystery series, which is about myths and legends and stuff like that. So always different things, right? The Betty and Barney Hill, the UFO abduction coming up for one of our UFO incidents shows, and
Nice.
Awesome,
it's a
man.
constant race to find new stuff. Because the one thing I like is like a lot of channels that come out, I don't fault them for it, but you got to question what you're watching, because they're like, 30-second TikTok videos is something extreme happening, or there's just more about the thrill-seeking side of things. They just go into abandoned buildings and try to provoke something, which we don't do.
Mhm.
Everyone that creates content on our channel is serious about it, like our conversations we're having here, and they want to try to get actual factual information out for people to make up their own minds. And I really appreciate that everyone involved on the channel is creating content like that.
Yeah, that's
which is
great.
really good.
Yeah, you want everybody to have the same goal in mind, to put
Yeah,
out the best
right?
quality content with the closest to the truth that
think
you can
so.
get,
Yeah, and I mean, truth is, yeah, especially in this field, who knows, right? But I mean, that's just our goal, is to try to kind of, at least from my perspective as a manager, because I know as someone who's a paranormal investigator, if I was going out faking stuff and staging stuff, my career as a paranormal investigator would be gone. It would be over.
right.
As someone that takes this seriously, right? Like,
That's what I keep telling some of the skeptic friends that I have. If they bring that up, it's like, if you actually sit down and have these conversations with these people, everyone is so genuine, and sometimes they even break out into tears. It's so touching to them. And I just can't see this. That's why I really got serious about this, is because I can't, even though I'm not an experiencer myself, as far as I'm aware of, I just can't see this many people being this genuine with me and having these conversations with me, and it all being BS. So that's how I got into it, and that's why I'm like, wow, there's something really to this,
that's just it. There's too many people having too many things for it to be a hoax or something that's not real.
Yeah.
Right. And the people who have it, especially like when you talk about like Bigfoot encounters and alien, even like hauntings, like it can ruin lives. Then the sad thing is, there's been enough people who have staged stuff to make a buck off of it that it hurts the credibility of the people who are genuinely having these experiences, right? Or that if it's planted too much of a seed of doubt, and especially in our modern world, like we could be talking now, the three of us, and something could literally come through a wall and pass through one of our screens. But even though it's live, people would think you staged it and made it up because of all these TV shows where they've done that, or the YouTube videos where they deep fake stuff. You know what I mean? Yep. Which is too bad. So I think it's going to take something really profound on a large scale to really get everybody on board.
That's what I was thinking too.
But that's what's going to have to happen.
Yeah, I've thought about that too, because with every day that goes by, computers are getting better, CGI is better, graphics on video games are getting better. So it's like every day that goes by, and when the technology gets better like that, it requires the proof to be even larger, or like have an even
it's almost
bigger
like
impact.
it's almost like we're being told, believe your own eyes and not what everybody else is trying to show you. Just
we're going to show you
faith in your own
individually.
experience, right? Like,
yes, yeah, it's like disclosure is going to be individual.
That's why I don't really get all hot and bothered when people start talking about UFO videos, because it's like it's just really not my jam. I mean, I can pretty much go outside and look up in the sky myself, and I don't know. For me, it doesn't take that much to see them. It just takes spending a little bit of time outside.
It's true. And when you see something, it's then holding yourself accountable, right? Like I've had experiences where we have gone out and skywatched and we saw something, and like we did the video, and buddy Sean and I was like, holy cow, there's something. And we saw it and we shot the video, and we had the stablest camera ever, but it still came out really shaky and blurry, like all these UFO videos. But we went and looked at the sky charts, and we found out we were actually just seeing a constellation, but it looked like a UFO, like it had the blinking light. So then If you see something, don't just go, yeah, it's aliens. Go and then hold yourself accountable. Do the research to find out what might have been happening in the sky and rule out whether or not there was actually something legitimately happening. You know what I mean? Like that's, you can take the scientific process and do it yourself. And if you rule everything else out and you can't figure out what it was, then it probably was a UFO. You know what I mean? Like, or a UAP or whatever they want to call them nowadays. That's all you got to do. And then you're satisfied and no one can tell you didn't have that experience.
Right.
Like,
yep.
That's sort of how I look at it.
I got to let you know, this is the time of the show that, I don't know if you're aware of these guys, Jamie and Bree, from that one time I was abducted by aliens podcast. But this is the time of the show when she finally wakes up and she starts harassing us in the chat room. So if you see see her typing in all caps, it's just her. Oh, that was
not spooky. Laughing at you.
Not laughing at you. We're laughing at Jamie being goofy. Spooky, thank you so much for your after-hour Super Bowl pipe cleaning. My pipes were so wet, and you came and handled them perfectly.
Oh, like the Shorzy of YouTube.
What are we at? 55 minutes, and it's already started.
Yeah.
Oh man. So yeah, we're gonna have to just start telling.
Starting to get hot in here.
That if you guys see us laughing, we're not laughing at you. It's Jamie. It's Jamie. Yeah, we'll have to book you over on that show, man.
Like that's, you know.
You'd have a good time over there. They have a good time usually. Their show.
You definitely want to check out that website and that podcast.
Yeah, they the one that they had me on this past weekend. Their segment that they do is called Butt Stuff.
Butt Stuff?
Butt Stuff with Jamie and Bree. So
we've all got one.
Yeah, you might get invited to Butt Stuff with Jamie and Bree. Just
interesting.
So you know.
Interesting.
Yeah, here I'll pull up their their goofballs over there. Butt Stuff with Chad. Right here. And then Butt Stuff with Mr. Riot, Jazz Shaw, Amy, Alien Girl 111, UCR. So everyone's kind of been on there. Then they had like a Golden Probes Award show, which was really good. So yeah, I'll give them a little plug while they're
and they've got a
in the
spooky
chat
too.
Yeah, they've got spooky over there too. So we're kind of mirrored shows, I guess. They're a lot goofier though.
It's kind of like I was on Tinfoil Hat with Sam Tripoli, and that was a blast. But he always brings a bit of a sense of humor to it, right? Like it's always it was fun. Awesome. And it's good to do that. I mean, you got to kind of have fun with it too at the same time, right?
Yeah, that's how these conversations usually go. Especially if we get a big panel going. You know, we'll get I was telling you before, we'll have a goofy conversation, and 5 minutes later it'll turn real serious. So it's cool. Got to have a little bit of.
We're talking about some pretty heavy stuff, to be honest. I mean,
we are
ourselves. Right?
Like, so you got to take it kind of one step at a time and have a bit of, when there's humor to be had some humor out of it.
Absolutely. Right. Yep. Absolutely. Oh, thanks, Jamie. Appreciate that. Jason, I have a question from Bobby Stout in the chat. Okay. Chad, can you ask if he ever gets odors when he investigates? I can't read.
Odors. Yeah. Well, from time to time, the only real odor that I picked up on, we were at a place called O'Keefe Ranch. It was one of the historic cattle ranch that's now open, you know, for tours and stuff like that. And we were investigating inside the manor, and people had reported that you could smell like pipe tobacco inside, because it's one of those, you know, they had the traditional sitting room where, you know, after dinner the men would go in and smoke their pipes and drink their brandy and whiskey and talk and stuff. And we were the only people that had been in that building for hours, even the whole day. And no one smokes in there anymore. You're not allowed to smoke in there. And, you know, we went through that area at one point and there was no smell at all. It just smelled like old building. And then going back, it smelled like someone had been smoking a pipe inside there. So that's the only real odor that we picked up that I could attribute to being not just naturally there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And people had reported smelling that.
Yeah, I think I've heard of people saying that they smell sulfur too around Bigfoot sightings.
Well, Bigfoot's supposed to have a whole bunch of odors attached to him, which, I mean, if it's flesh and blood, it's just, you got to think some hairy thing in the woods is not going to smell pretty, right? It's going to
even a brown bear is going to have a stench to him. Yeah,
they do, right? You know, we've had brown bear encounters myself, so it just happens. But but yeah, and I mean, then you've got the whole, like, if it's the demonic, there's the sulfur and all that kind of smell with it too, which I don't know about that yet, but I mean, enough people have talked about it that you can't discount it either, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just always hesitate to throw the word demon around because it's got more of a biblical connotation than anything else.
Yeah.
Um,
I thought that was
but yeah,
interesting
those
when
kind
you
of orders.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting when you said that your friend that you were with, he was out doing a paranormal hunt with you, but he doesn't really believe in Bigfoot.
Yeah, which it's just fun, and which is neat. And I think it's more just for Peter because he hasn't had any kind of experience that he could attribute to it, right? He's very.
Mm-hmm.
We're all as investigators quite skeptical, like in the sense that we don't take anything at face value until we're either able to experience it or B, rule out every other possibility. And on an investigation, we might have something happen that we've deemed as paranormal because we just can't explain it. But if something else happens, we don't just say, "Oh, that's paranormal too." So we take each little incident and try to break it down as much as we can to figure it out. And it's the whole Occam's razor theory, right? Once you've ruled every other possibility out, whatever remains, however illogical, is fact. And we do everything in an investigation that way. So that's more of Peter's thing. But I've been in the woods. I've grown up in the woods. I mean, I've had stuff happen I can't explain. I've had that feeling of just intense dread come out of nowhere. And it's like, you got to go. So I listen to it. And I've seen the trees falling over. I've seen the weird structures. So I can't, I have no doubt there's something out there that people call Sasquatch. Like what it is it flesh and blood? I like to think so. But I know people in the indigenous community that say, no, it's more of a spiritual being, and they can support that theory based on what they've seen and experienced. So I can't rule that fact out either, right? And there's enough woo stuff related to Bigfoot and UFOs and this other phenomenon that you just like, I'm not going to say no because I can't say no.
Right. I think I'm in the same boat. Like I believe. See, that's the thing is I believe it. I just haven't experienced it. Even saying I believe it, I'm kind of like, do you really though? Because you haven't seen one.
Which is good. You should do that. You shouldn't just go like, I believe everything. You know what I mean? Like you got to kind of, have it in your mind. Like, I think it's possible. And if you have an encounter that may answer your question for you one way or the other.
Sometimes I get jealous kind of just listening to everybody's experiences. And I'm just sitting here like, wow. But then, the last time I was out in the woods was months ago. So I can't complain. I can't bitch to myself.
Well, and you got to be in the woods a lot, I think. It's rare when people just, their first trip to the woods, they're going to have some kind of experience. You got to spend a lot of time, right? And even if Bigfoot's a thing, it's not, you could be in the woods for years and it could be like 4 feet from you and you're not going to see it. It'll see it. The only time you're going to see it is if it really wants you to see it, I think, is how it works. Or that adapted existing and avoiding human contact.
Have you heard of anyone seeing an orb and Bigfoot in the same, like at the same hunt or the same investigation?
I've heard of people seeing like a white light in a spot where one's supposed to be. But just like I've heard that one that was out in the Adirondack Mountains, out on the East Coast. And just having an unexplainable white light that would show up and then all their electronics went weird and all that kind of stuff. That's the only time I've heard of it, like from someone that I know personally who does investigate this. That's the only time I've had that heard of that happening. I haven't, in the West Coast, I haven't heard of anything quite like that before, but it's a phenomenon I'm aware of. And one person I know, Kenny W. Irish, who investigates Bigfoot out of New York, had an experience like that happen.
Yeah, I'm bad with remembering who said what because we haven't had very many podcasts, but just the small amount that we've had, it's hard to remember who said what fact. But I do, I do remember someone saying something about that, and I lost my train of thought. What were you just talking about? Oh, lights and Sasquatch being related. I've heard of people saying that they have seen like an orb become a Sasquatch or the other way around, where he's like flesh and blood and then turns into a white orb. So that's why I asked that question, is if you've ever heard of that happening before.
Yeah, and they didn't see the light become the Sasquatch or vice versa, but there was this white light they couldn't explain after hearing wood knocks and something big walking through the woods. And so who knows? I mean, and again, Skinwalker Ranch has a bunch of phenomenon like that attached to it, like, whole portals opening up and something coming through it. that they could see with the naked eye, but their scientific equipment and cameras couldn't pick up at all. They just saw a blob like on the screen kind of thing, right? Which I think is kind of interesting. Yeah.
Cassie
What
said,
do you think
"How
about that?
accurate-"
What do you think about that Skinwalker Ranch, Jason? As far as
I would
Bigelow and
I'd love to go. I've read the book. You know, George Knapp wrote a book on it, and the whole, what was it, NIDS, the scientific group, was out there for years. I've read all their stuff and watched the doc, and I've studied it. I think that place is a prime example. If you wanted to find something that could be potentially support a multiverse theory, like I think that place is like the hot spot for it. And I can't wait for travel to get easier, because I'd love to go down there and try to get to it and see it. I think it's just wild what's going on down there.
One of the things about Skinwalker that always, fascinates me and it keeps me curious is, the whole transition between Bigelow running it, owning it, all that data and research that happened. It seems like it went off into the who knows where. And I just don't really understand how it was passed over. And what happened to all that studying and information that happened all those years that Bigelow and his team were in on it, and with the government's funding.
Well, yeah, and that was almost, to me, it sounds like an information gathering experiment, right? Just to kind of get what info they could. And they got tons. Like, if you've read the book Hunt for the Skinwalker, like, it's all in there. Everything they found is in there.
Yep.
And it came out that way. And then, of course, Jeremy Corbell did a documentary based on the book, because he's tight with George Knapp. And so that documentary, like, it's a 2.5 hour paranormal documentary or something like that. Like, it's all there, including actual video stuff from it. So, I mean, it's out there. Who knows why, like, more hasn't been done. But again, like, as we've talked about before on the show, like, if the government backed it and has that info, they're going to want to release it when they think they can. And I'm glad that other people have written books and docs about it. And there's I kind of question the History Channel show that's out there right now, but I mean, there's another group that was out there for a season or two doing a show on it. So I mean, it's still there, and everybody, if you mention Skinwalker Ranch, everybody knows what you're talking about. Like,
I don't even think the team at Skinwalker is probably super happy with the way that it's been portrayed on the History Channel, but I think that it's awesome that at least it was out there, and we've been able to have high definition cameras out there, and they've done some investigations. They've taken the helicopters up, and I mean, I don't know, at least History Channel brought us that much.
Yeah. And it kept it in the public consciousness, right? Like, it's very much now part of pop culture, Skinwalker Ranch. Like, it's huge. And I think it's something, I think there's so much going on there that is involved with every different phenomenon. You've got like poltergeist activity, you've got UFO activity, you've got monsters being seen, and it was all reported long before the ranch was around, right? It's attached to that. I can't remember pronounce it, probably the unit Unta Basin or whatever. I think they pronounce it. That whole area is supposed to be rife with activity going back to before the settlers showed up. And it was, just First Nations living there. So there's something about that place that is tied into this phenomenon more than anything else. It's just people that went and tried to settle it with a ranch, and now that's going on. You got people living there, right? Or you had people living there. So
it's got a cool name too. So that as soon as people hear that name, they're like, "What's that all about?"
Oh yeah, right. And then Skinwalker is now just a term people use for like a monster. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's everywhere.
I heard about a cryptid that started out as fiction. I'm trying to think of what that was. I was listening to it last night on a podcast, and they were talking about how this started out as a complete fake story, that it started out completely fake, and then the more people talked about it, the more it became where they couldn't put the lid back on it. Even the people that originally came up with the story were like, "Hey, no, we were just joking. Like, this is not real." They're like, "No, it's real, man." Kind of like the birds are fake thing.
It's happened a few times. Like, what they call it, there's a term, a tulpa, where it's almost because a story gets out there so much and people believe in it so much, or spread the story around, that it almost wills it into reality. I don't know if I believe in that kind of thing, but but who am I to say no? That happened with Slender Man as well.
That's
right?
what
like,
it was.
It was a creepypasta. enough people did drawings and stories, and they've made movies out of it, and YouTube videos and books, and that now people are reported seeing Slenderman in the woods.
And it's
Right.
like, no, dude, that was fake.
It's like, but that to me is the woo part now of what people are talking about, because it's like we knew it wasn't real,
right?
But
somebody
now
wrote the story. Yeah, that's interesting.
I think Dogman's kind of like that too. It was something that people just started talking about or reported seeing in the last few years, and now they're having Dogman sightings everywhere, right? Like it's kind of, I find it interesting. Like there's new stuff keeps showing up all the time. So are we willing it into existence? Maybe, I don't know.
Well, and as the population grows, like one little rumor can turn into like a statewide fact in no time.
Yeah.
So just a couple people telling a story like, hey, you wouldn't believe what I saw this weekend. And then, hey, you wouldn't believe what my friend saw this weekend. And then it just it goes on and on and on. And next thing you know, it's a real thing people are seeing and writing movies about.
It's like it's like an urban legend, right? It's like the old story about the babysitter who gets the phone call from inside the house. You know, that started as a story, but then people say, "Oh yeah, I knew someone that was a babysitter and had that happen," and it's like it's the same idea, I think.
Right?
Really?
Yeah, it kind of seems like it is. Right.
So, but then they made when a stranger calls based on that. It's just how it works, right? Like the Slenderman thing's sad because that ended up in an attempted murder on a 14-year-old girl, I think, like that, because these two kids wanted to.
Man, that story was wild.
It was, yeah. And the documentary's amazing. Beware the Slenderman. Like it's an HBO doc about 5-6 years ago, and it's heartbreaking and fascinating at the same time, because these two kids believed it was real, and the only way to prevent Slenderman from like taking their parents was to go out and kill their best friend.
What?
Yeah.
That's a real thing that happened?
You never heard that, Chad?
2014 it happened.
Oh, man.
It's nuts. Absolutely. And that kind of ties into what we're talking about, right? People believing in something that isn't real. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And then that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Beware of the Slenderman. I'm going to have to check that out.
It's a great documentary. It's fascinating. I own it. It's well worth watching.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do that. Well, hey, Jason, I know that we don't have you for too much longer. I'm going to post your link here in the chat so that people can go to your YouTube channel. I'm definitely going to check out that new Bigfoot video that you've got coming out. That's on Friday, you said?
Monday. It comes out on Monday.
Oh, okay. Monday. Cool.
Yeah, we want to believe on Monday. I'm not sure what Crypto Campfire is cooking up for us this Friday yet, so we'll have to touch base with them.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you want to plug while you're here, or?
Just thanks so much for having me on and talking about this. We've got, like I said, the Paranormal Network on YouTube and also on Facebook at Paranormal Headquarters. Peter and I wrote a couple books. The newest one was called "I Want to Believe." I'll just put it up if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Check that out. It's on Amazon.
I Want to Believe.
It's a collection of stories from different paranormal investigators all over the world and their experiences and what got them into it. And we got like Paul Bradford from Ghost Hunters International's in there, Ken Gerhard, who's a renowned cryptozoologist out of Texas, Kieran O'Keefe, who was on Most Haunted in the UK, and he's a big parapsychologist. So yeah, please check that book out. It's available on Amazon.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to pull it up right. Oh, there it is right there. Jason Hewlett and Peter Wren. Is that his last name? Wren?
That's the one, yeah.
All right, I'm going to post that in the chat too, because it's a sweet looking book.
Yeah, thank you. So Beyond the Fray Publishing.
Oh, I've heard of them. I think that's who Connor goes through. Yeah,
they're becoming very big in the whole paranormal publishing circuit. Like there's lots of great material from them. So great books out there.
Well, cool, man. Thanks so much for coming on with us and having a conversation so early in the morning.
I appreciate that, guys. Awesome. Thanks so much for having me on. I've had a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was amazing. Thank you, Jason. Hey, Sonny.
Hey, guys. You got me for like 30 minutes. I can be on for like 30 minutes. Hey, Jason, It's nice. Dude, I was watching you the whole time. That was awesome. You did
thanks so much, Sonny. It was great to be on. Sorry I didn't get to chat more.
Yeah, hope we can have you back.
Anytime. Just ask. I'd be happy to come back on and talk anytime, and I'll make more coffee.
Right?
Awesome, Jason.
Mine's worn off.
Well, thanks so much, man. We'll definitely have you back.
It'd be great. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks.
Have a good
you
rest
too.
of
Take
the
care.
show.
All right,
Take care.
Thank you.
Good show, guys.
Man,
Hey,
that
thanks,
guy's
man.
awesome.
Yeah, that was a good show.
Yeah. He is really cool, man. I could just like give him one small thing to talk about, and he would just run with it. I'm like, yes, more
I'm
information.
definitely going to be checking out his YouTube.
Yeah, his YouTube channel looks really cool. And then that book too, the I Want to Believe book.
Mm-hmm.
One Man's Journey into the Paranormal. Here, I'll pull that up so people can see the book cover there. I need to change that so it comes up by itself. There you go. Won't even break the
Right on.
bank. Go check that book out, guys. Support Jason and Peter. All right, let's go to the chat and see who's laughing.
You don't want to go there.
Chad, did you tell
Something
Spooky what happened to me last night?
I did not. Oh, that's what I
Spooky?
wanted to ask Jason, dude. I wanted to ask him about gray orbs.
Oh.
I forgot to ask him. Come back, Jason.
Spooky did. I know I told you about the little clear bubble I seen in my living room 2 days ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So last night when me and Deanna got home from dinner, I went out back and I was staring up at the sky, just looking at shit. And I noticed 2 stars that just like almost seemed like they popped out of nowhere. Like they shouldn't have been there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm staring at it. And then I noticed they're floating across the sky. And then I was just like, oh no, this is it. And that was it. Spooky. 2 orbs. 2 orbs, exactly like on the videos, like Chris Bledsoe's videos, exactly like they try to describe them to us. They're no different. Spooky. That's a real thing. I told Chad, for the longest time, I felt like I believed Josh 100%. And then when I seen these things, dude, I just had like my body started shaking and I had this feeling come over me like, Josh Casey is not crazy. That was the first thing that came out of my mouth. And I was like, that is real. I can't believe I'm seeing this. I have my phone in my hand and I wouldn't record it. I'm just looking at it and watching them. It's just like on the videos. They start to, after you get to see them for a while, they started to flicker as they were moving. And then they got bright and then just gone, man. They just disappear.
So what do you say to all those people that say, why didn't you record it? You know, where's the proof? What do you say to that?
For me, I was in shock at first, and then I just thought, no, I want to see this. I want to see what this is. I want to see what's going to happen. And
This is my experience.
it's 100% what we see on the videos, guys. There's no difference other than the color. And what I noticed is I'm not looking through a camera. You don't need night vision. You don't need a camera, guys. You can just see these with your eyes. They're for me, they were white. They were white balls, and definitely when you see it, you'll know because you'll say, okay, for sure that's it, because it can't be anything else in the world. It can't be anything else. You've never seen anything like it. It's way different than seeing it on video as far as seeing it with your own eyes, because you can't believe you're seeing it. For one, it's even though we've seen it so many times when you first
There's a part of you that wants to scream out to your neighbor next door, hey man, get over here, check this out. You got to see this with me. But something stops us from doing that. It's like, we don't want to be cray.
I don't got no neighbors. And well, my son-in-law was in there in the living room with me day before yesterday. And then last night I was out there by myself. But dude, Spooky, they're the exact same, bro. It's the exact same thing we're seeing on the videos, just not in that green tint. They're white. The ones I seen were white. And we don't have flares going off around here. And even if they dropped flares here constantly, I could have told the difference between those 2 orbs and a flare. They're nothing like a flare. They're these perfect little balls, man. These perfect little balls of light. And
I can pretty much guarantee you that you spend more time at night outside looking up, you're going to see a lot more of this.
I don't know. I look up all the time, dude. And that was the first time that's why I go out there. That's what I'm looking for. Is something.
Sonny got aliens.
I got aliens. I finally did it, guys. I finally seen it. I finally seen it for myself, dude. It's like I don't know. It's almost like not a relief, but damn.
Vindicated.
Yes, it's undescribable, guys. That's why Josh, I think, has a hard time trying to describe what he's seen. You can't. It's like somebody's up there in the sky flashing a light at you, and it looks like it's just for you. It looks like it's shining right at you. That's
Wait till you see him in your bedroom.
I've seen one in the living room. But
That's
the thing I seen in the
that's when
living
you
room, I'm
really
telling you,
freak
that's a
out.
little teeny tiny clear, like this smoky, not smoky, but you can see through it. The way I told Chad is it looked like when somebody has cataracts or their eye goes bad and they get that cloud over it. That's what it looked like. It was a cloud of that, but a ball floating. Well, it was not moving around. It was just like this in the living room. It wasn't floating around like a bubble. It wasn't moving. And it was just like that. And about this high. And yeah, when my son-in-law came up to me, he couldn't see it. And I pulled him in real close. And I go, do you see it? It's right here. I go, look, I'm going to poke it. And as soon as I stuck my finger up underneath there, when I got that close to it, it went from stationary, not floating, to straight through the ceiling. And then I was just like, what the fuck did I just see? Like, I thought it was a bubble the whole time. We couldn't figure out where a bubble came from, like, because he didn't have no soap going, and there's no kids in there blowing bubbles. No one's in the shower. No one's doing laundry. You know, this bubble was just here. He was in the kitchen deboning a chicken. It had nothing to do with soap. So, yeah, that was pretty trippy. It was just a bubble in the house, guys.
That's terrible. I can't believe she's typing that kind of stuff in here.
If I put my finger in you, you might shoot through the ceiling too, Jamie.
Oh my god.
Oh man, I love when they get on here.
Oh my god, dude.
Sometimes I think Bree is feeding her this questions and comments. I really do, man. This is not just the work of one.
Oh man, oh man. How does she wake up this early and is this funny? Man.
I can just imagine Bree in her lair, and she's just like typing all these different things. Say this, say this.
Exactly. All right, now
Gotta
send
get
this
'em.
right here. Oh, she's at work. She's all alone.
Dang it.
I'm all alone.
We need them girls up in here. Did I see that they're going to be on here? On
Yes.
the calendar? Oh, boy. That's
Did you
going to
see
be one
that?
for the record books.
I don't even know if they know that. Do they realize they signed up to be on here that early? Oh, yeah.
That's
Jamie
gonna
told me she
be-
took the day off to be on here. That's right.
Whoa.
That's commitment right there. Isn't that commitment? February 22nd, a week from today. Jamie and Bree, from that one time I was abducted by aliens. They will be on here.
That's the day payback.
Ooh, who could we get in the chat? We could get somebody in the chat typing a bunch of crap. Try to get them to laugh.
Spooky. Spooky
That's
knows how
gonna
to
be-
get under their skin.
Mm-hmm. I took the whole day off work. She says, Spooky, try me.
Yeah, I've already had that proposition before.
Try me. Oh, God, you guys. You guys have some crazy chemistry.
Man, Sonny dropped some experience on us.
Yeah, and when he told me about it last night, it sounded just like Josh sounds when he's
Yeah.
after he sees something.
That shit's amazing. Wait, see,
What did your wife say, Sonny?
I know,
when you
I
told
know
her?
for sure. She thinks we're all crazy still.
Your wife does?
What really freaked me out, dude, is when my son-in-law was like, "Oh, those are just spirits." Like it was no big deal, dude. Those are just spirits. You know, my mom said they're just spirits. I used to see those in my house where I grew up all the time. I was just
Who said that?
My son-in-law, like it was no big deal. That little bubble thing in the house that don't move. It's like
Yeah.
I tried to touch it, it just it was gone. Yeah, that was no big deal to him. I was just like, what the? That's a big deal to me. I've never seen anything like that. I hear about all this stuff, but until 2 days ago, I'd never seen anything to do with an orb. I've seen shit fly over the house, big, huge, flying wing thing that didn't make any noise. But I've never seen a ball of light like that. Matter of fact, I told you guys before at the other house I seen a ball of light, and I wasn't ever for sure. I didn't know if that was like some kind of plain light that when I seen it from like a bathroom window, and when I went out to the front yard to look at it, it was gone. What I seen was definitely not an orb that night. Now that I've seen one, that was not an orb. It was just some other light. But what I seen last night was 2 orbs. What's Jamie saying now?
I'm sorry, it's Jamie. It's not you, it's Jamie. You guys can't see it. But that bed back there is full of whips, chains, and handcuffs.
That's right.
Can you see me bed? I was trying to get that out of the camera there.
Not really. Just because we know
Chad,
what it is.
Chad, we got someone backstage.
Oh my God.
Is it okay if we bring in Bim?
Yeah. How long is he? What's up, Bim Jim?
Oh, he's probably been there for a bit.
Hi. Hi, can you hear me okay? How's my audio?
Actually, it's really good. Your microphone's working good today.
Very good. Now, Sonny, you were just talking about the orbs, right? Now, the thing is, I've never seen an orb. I've seen flying saucers and aliens and cryptids, but I've never seen an orb. Now, I wonder why that is. Okay. Now, Sonny, do you believe in ghosts? Do you know that ghosts exist? Do you know they exist?
It's still hard for me, man. Yeah, I kind of believe in ghosts now.
Okay.
I believe in spirits. I didn't used to until recently, but I do now.
Okay, great. Now, I totally believe in ghosts. I mean, I encountered ghosts back 50 years ago, the first time I encountered a ghost, and then more of them. And I totally accept them as part of the universe, but I don't like them. And I told him that when I met a ghost, I'd say, I know what you are. You're a ghost. Get away from me. I don't like you. Right. This is how I treat them. I don't like them. Now, maybe I'm just constructing an hypothesis here. Maybe because I already believe in ghosts. I know about them. I got no problem with them. I just want them to stay away and not interfere with me. Maybe because of that attitude, I never see an orb. Now that would fit with this idea that orbs are spirits or ghosts or what would you call them? Consciousnesses that are no longer alive. Now, this just could be. I don't know but I wonder why I've never seen an orb here. One of my friends has seen an orb here, and I believe him. And he was with another guy down on the beach, looking out at the ocean, and they saw a bright light out right over the ocean below the horizon, and it was a bright light sitting there just above the water, and they could see the reflection on the water, right? And they're watching this thing, 2 guys, they're watching it, and all of a sudden it started to move to the right, and then it took off at a very high speed, just over the water, very high speed to the right, and then came back again at very high speed, then stopped, and then took off up into the sky, right up into the sky, and was gone. So I believe this guy. He doesn't know anything about paranormal or flying saucers or anything like that. All he can do is just tell me what he saw, right? And so I believe him. But personally, I've never seen an orb, so I don't know why that is. But
me neither. Until even when I seen the thing in the house, that little bubble thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like I seen something in there that looked like it shot through the ceiling after I tried to touch it, but I don't know if it was a bubble that popped. I don't know if somehow that bubble went super fast straight up without moving like a bubble, but it just. But then the next night, last night I seen this, and there was just no mistaking it. There's nothing else that it could be. After seeing it on the videos, and after it was like it just verified everything that Josh has ever shown me from Chris Bledsoe. Yeah. That's what it was for me. It was definite verification. You can't mistake it for anything else. They don't travel fast enough to go out of sight. And when they're flashing at you, it's almost like before they disappeared all the way, those flashes, it's almost like like I said, is directly flashing a light at you. with a flashlight trying to communicate with you far away.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they're saying goodbye before they before they disappear. Those flashes, it's very strange, and then they just
Yeah.
fade out real slow and soft, and then they're gone. They
Yeah.
don't.
Well, maybe they're trying to teach you personally something. This is how I treat a lot of my experiences.
The
Like
first for me, guys.
somebody's trying to teach me something, right? Some entity, or some people call it God. I call it the aliens, but they are trying to teach me stuff, And when I learn a lesson, okay, then I go on to another lesson, right? So I don't need to learn about orbs. I already understand for some reason. I don't exactly understand why, but yeah, I already understand them. So in my paranormal experiences, I've had a range of experiences. Like I've had the dark-eyed kids, I've had the UFOs, I've had the cryptids, spirit animals, time anomalies. I've been through portals. But now some of these other things I have not experienced. Okay, I don't know, but it's a lot like they, and I don't know who they are, but they are trying to educate me or teach me. And once I learn a lesson, well, I don't need that one anymore. I don't know. This is one way of looking at it. But you know what? The reason I phoned in here though, really, is I wanted to talk to that Jason guy. Was that his name?
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
I got
Yep.
links. I got links to him, so I can look him up later. But I really wanted to talk to that guy. Now he's an expert on Skinwalker, right? Seems he's read everything. So okay, the question involves Skinwalker, and I've consumed all I could find about Skinwalker online. I haven't read the books or actually I haven't watched the documentary. However, I've consumed everything else, and there's one story there that hits me as so true that I wanted to ask Jason if he's heard about this story from out of Skinwalker. And it's the one about the invisible entity that was a tall bipedal entity, and it walked between a bunch of guys. Okay, some of the Skinwalker scientists were standing at the edge of a little small lake. They're just standing there chatting, and this entity walked right through the bunch of them. It was an invisible entity, or partially visible, possibly called the Shimmer Man. And it walked right between them through the crowd down into the lake. And they saw it displace the water of the lake as it walked in, and it displaced the water in its own shape, of course. And its shape was that very much of a Sasquatch-sized bipedal kind of creature, right? Okay, so I wanted to ask him if he had heard that story out of Skinwalker, and I want to know if any of you guys have heard that story out of Skinwalker.
No, I have not. That's the first time I've heard that.
Okay, I've
Funny.
heard it. And the reason I'm so interested in that one, especially, is because I met that creature too. We, unfortunately, a lot of people have. I've collected, oh gosh, around 20 accounts of this entity, and it's called. It has different names. Unfortunately, it's got a whole bunch of different names. Some people call it the invisible Sasquatch. Some people call it predator. Some people call it Shimmer Man. But it's all the same entity, and it does certain behaviors. It doesn't exactly behave like a Sasquatch. It does different. Like its behavior is characteristic. One thing it does is it stands and watches you, kind of like it's interested in people, but it's invisible. Okay, and it's standing there watching you, and then there's you. It's not totally invisible because it interacts with the matter around it, and it disturbs the matter like it did the water in the pond, right? It does that, and so you can see it, or it has a shimmer to it also, and some people see the shimmer. And So the one thing it does is stands and watches you, and then another thing it does is it runs. It likes to run, and it's a bipedal Sasquatch-sized running entity, and it runs through the forest a lot. It's been seen running through fields of grass, hay, something like that. It's been seen running up through trees, like kind of up up in the air through the leaves of trees, right? And running through that. And when it runs like that, that's when you see the shape of it, because it displaces the vegetation. And that's how you see the shape of it, right? That's how I saw the shape of it. Okay. And I encountered it. I I was closer than anybody to this thing in any of the accounts I've heard, because I was 2 feet away from it at one point, and it was right in front of me. I knew there was something there, but I just couldn't figure out what it was. I was looking at it. I was thinking, what the hell is this? I'm standing right there, and I had my hiking stick in my hand. Was in the forest, and I had my hiking stick in my hand. So I'm trying to figure out what the hell is this, and I pushed my stick into it. Right? That's why I say, sometimes I joke. I say I poked an alien with my stick. Right? Poke him with a stick. You see an alien, poke him with a stick. Right? That's what I'm talking about. I
Yeah.
poked him with a stick, and he started to shake and shiver. Like, it was almost like he was in fear or something. The bushes all started to shake and shiver, and it started to move. So this circle of shaking bushes began to move away from me, and then took off running. And that's when I could see the shape of it running up through these bushes and stuff. Right? I could see its bipedal shape and its height. It was, like about 7 feet high, because its head would displace the bushes up to a height of 7 feet. And then, okay, and this all fits with these other accounts that I've heard other people write or speak online. There's another guy who is a hunter, and he wrote. He's a very good writer. He wrote his story out very, very clearly, and he's a hunter, and he was standing out in the forest with his rifle across his chest, and he heard something. Turned to his left. He saw the bushes moving over to his left, and something was moving fast towards him through this undergrowth, right? And it's really running fast, and it's coming towards him and towards him. And he had his rifle across his chest, but he never thought of aiming his rifle at it, because he didn't know what it was. But it came right past him. It ran close to him and right past him. And what his words were, he wrote, I looked into the hole, and there was nothing in the hole. And that's exactly my words, identical words. When I saw the thing that I said that exactly to a friend of mine when I was trying to tell her about it. I said, yeah, it was like a invisible Sasquatch running through the forest, and I looked into the hole, and there was nothing in the hole, right? So this is how I know this is all the same thing. This shimmer man, predator, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same entity. So I guess, yeah, that's why I phoned in, because I wanted to know if anybody else has that story out of Skinwalker, because I got the same experience myself. So anyway, what else is going on?
Guys, I gotta dip out.
Oh, you gotta leave already?
Listening. Yeah, I'll go jump in the chat. I got a long
bitch.
drive.
All right, man. All right, you
long
gotta be here
ride.
Thursday.
Yeah, I'll be here, guys.
See ya.
I'll be here. Hey, see you guys later. Keep that show going. It's good.
Hey, you gonna
All right, Sonny.
you gonna
Chat's
do
so
a
good. I'm gonna join the chat.
you gonna do a paranormal shop Wednesday after hours or tonight? See if we
maybe.
can talk into it, maybe.
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
All right, that was
I'll
a pretty
try.
good hit last week.
Yep. I'll
All
try,
right, see you,
man.
Sonny.
Okay, dude.
Peace.
Peace out, guys.
See ya. Good on you, mate.
Hey, Bim Jim, look what I've been doing. Instead of using the Keurig.
Oh, what is that? Beans?
Coffee. Yeah, ground coffee beans in a French press.
Cool.
That's how I've been drinking my coffee since we had that conversation with you that one time about extracting the most you can out of the coffee beans.
I got another story about coffee. This is I achieved a high, and the way I did it was I stopped drinking coffee for about a week, and I just ran out of coffee, and I thought, well, I'll just stop drinking coffee for a week and see what difference it makes, and it didn't make much difference. I mean, I would have liked to have my coffee, but I drank a lot of pop during that week with no coffee. But then Here's the high you get is when you start drinking coffee again. Wow, it's a blast, man. It blow the top of your head right off.
Wow.
I never knew it was that good of a stone, but it is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that was
So like
fun.
anytime we take a tolerance break on anything like that, and then we hit it again. Oh, hit the mute button. Yeah, we're gonna come back to it, and Jamie, geez.
Yeah, I should stop smoking. I know. But I keep thinking of more reasons why to keep smoking. Like the native people said tobacco was a medicine. So I think, well, maybe it's okay to smoke.
Yeah.
And then the other excuse I have is my dad lived to be 98 and he smoked like a chimney, right? He lived to be 98. He smoked and drank vast quantities, right? And lived to
Right.
be 98. So I think,
See,
well, maybe it's not so bad.
yeah, see, it's almost like just live the way you want to live and see what happens. You know?
Yeah, you can't. I quit almost everything else, medications, alcohol. I quit a whole bunch of stuff, and I still have a little puff on the tobacco, though.
Yeah.
Figure it's okay. What the hell? I'm still
Do you,
alive.
do you do what Connor says here and grow your own tobacco?
No. I should because they put they put the price up by 4 times here.
Oh
They
yeah,
they
I can't even.
quadrupled the flipping price of tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, it's expensive. Now it's
Oh
costing me
yeah.
more than my internet, and that's expensive, man. Dang it. But yeah, whatever.
Well,
We carry on. I mean, what the hell?
crack, crack does me the same way. That's hilarious.
Can't be perfect.
No, can't be perfect.
No.
So what else you been seeing? Been seeing your bears up there still? Or are they all hibernating?
The bears. Now this is January, February. They'll be coming out of hibernation pretty soon now, and I'll go. I'll go out and look for them when they come out of hibernation. That time of year, they're grumpy, they're hungry and real grumpy, and there's nothing to eat. There's no berries to eat. There's no salmon to eat,
Oh, I'd be mad.
oh, they're hungry and they're really pissed off, and the only thing to eat that is in bloom in February, March, let's say late March, something like that. There's this flower in the swamps. It's called skunk cabbage, and they eat that, but it's the only thing to eat at that time of year. So I wrote a story about a bear. It's actually a true story, but well, it's partially true. But anyway, this bear, uh, and I named the story "Skunk Cabbage Time in the Forest" because that's when the bears come out. And these flowers come up out of the swamp, and if you pull them up, there's this like a potato at the bottom of it, and you can eat that, right? Skunk cabbage. And the bears are very grumpy and sick, and some of them die around that time as well, because they just got no food. The young ones die a lot. 7 out of 8 bears die before they get to reproductive age. Seven.
That's a
7 out of
real
8.
fact, huh?
70.
7 out of 8.
Have I got that right? No, I'm sorry. No, it's 75%. What's that? That's 3 out of 4. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's 3 out of 4.
Holy
Yeah,
smokes, man.
3 out of 4 die before they get to reproductive age. And yeah, well, the average female black bear has 8 cubs, and 7 of them, no, 6 of them die, and 2 live to reproductive age, and that keeps the population steady. This is math from biology that I study, and yeah, so 3/4 die, leaving 2 alive. Same with salmon. I mean, 2 salmon, a male and a female, return to a creek, and they lay 1,000 or let's say 1,000 eggs, the 2 of them. Well, of those 1,000 eggs, really only 2 survive to come back to spawn again. Otherwise, the population of the creek would go way up or way down. So that's their natural mathematics of their reproductive strategy, which is something I've studied in biology. So yeah, it's typical. And in humans, well, you see, humans back when we were wild, when we were tribal people, we had a 50% infant mortality rate. That is, half the children died, and that kept the population stable, right? So actually, if we were living naturally, then 50% mortality rate would be a natural mortality rate. Okay, that would be Cro-Magnon, and I identify as Cro-Magnon. My pronouns are Ugg and Gork. That's how I identify. But
Very nice.
the Cro-Magnon, they they were the most highly evolved Homo sapien sapien. They are our species. They're humans, but in all the different human forms, they were the most highly evolved. They had the biggest brains, biggest muscles, everything. And yeah, so that's why I identify as Cro-Magnon. But I'm not really that big or strong or anything. But it's a nice thing to think, I guess. This
Yeah.
is all. This biology stuff I've been studying for decades, actually, and I have.
Yeah, you're an engineer, right?
Yes. Originally, metallurgy and organic chemistry.
Metallurgy. Oh, so what do you think about this metamaterial that they're finding, or that they have supposedly, and they're doing studies on?
Absolutely fascinating. Yeah. That is absolute proof. I mean, if the isotope ratios are way out, and if the you see the metallurgy is about, it's also called material science, and you study the properties of materials, and that's what I worked with. I worked with the properties of high temperature steels and other materials and stuff like that, and that's what I studied. But yeah, these metamaterials are flipping fascinating to me. I mean, and we humans are now making these nano what are they called, nano composites. And I read up on that stuff, and this is all new science from when I was in college. Oh my goodness, that's great. I mean, they're putting these nano composites or nano ceramic composites into jet engines, right in the middle of the jet engine, and that is extreme. I mean, that is really extreme. If they can make a material that replaces titanium in the center of the jet engine, and if this new material, which is called a nano ceramic composite, if they can make that and make it better than titanium, then they can improve the efficiency and power of jet engines quite tremendously, really, because the jet engine is limited by the temperature, the maximum temperature, because I mean, you can only contain a temperature if you have the material to contain it, and the titanium is the best we got as far as a material that can be strong enough and can contain that high temperature, high pressure, and
Titanium is still the strongest we have.
yes, yeah, it's a titanium alloy. I'm not sure the exact. It's got titanium and iron and I think cobalt and a few other things in it. It's a mixture, but it's primarily titanium. That's the best, highest temperature material we have, and that's why we use it in the middle of jet engines. Yeah, titanium. Yeah, pretty cool stuff.
What about like what's the material from a meteorite? Like if we find a meteorite, is that mainly iron, or
there are iron nickel meteorites, and there are also stony meteorites, which are made of a different material. They're more like rock or stone or something like that, right? And then there's also carbonaceous. I think those are the three main types of meteors that come down and land on Earth. Meteors and or meteorites. Once they come to rest, they're a meteorite because they're a rock. Okay, and so okay, there's those three types that I know of. Now the metal type of thing is primarily iron and nickel, and it will have other metals in it as well. That stuff, that's a very interesting material. It has a characteristic isotope ratio of the metals, which tells us that it comes from this solar system, because our whole solar system has characteristic isotope ratios, right? And then if something comes from another sun, it will have probably very likely a different isotope ratio. And that's how we
Hmm.
can tell if we get these materials from alien spacecraft, and we find a bit of anything, aluminum, any metal, or well, actually any element really, and if it has a different isotope ratio, we can say, okay, well, that came from another star. You know, that's very good evidence that that's aliens brought it here. You know, it's very good
Yeah.
evidence. And yeah, that's what isotope ratios are all about. You know, it's our solar system. All the elements have a certain isotope ratio about them, even the hydrogen and everything, hydrogen, helium, beryllium, etc. It's all this characteristic isotope ratios in all these elements. Tin is interesting. It's a metal and an element, and it has the largest number of isotopes. There are 10 different isotopes of tin. If you want to know about it, but anyways, 10 different isotopes. So that's the most isotopes for one element. And then I think there's some elements have only one isotope, I believe. I'm not sure about that, but so that's kind of interesting. And these 10 isotopes in the tin have a certain ratio to them, right? Be ratios for percentage of this isotope, percentage of that isotope, and so on. And the isotope, you have to look at the atom in order to understand what an isotope is. The atoms have neutrons and protons in their nucleus, of course. Neutrons and protons. Now, if there's a different number of neutrons, then it doesn't change the charge because the neutron is neutral. Okay, it doesn't change the charge. So it's the same element. So for example, in hydrogen, you got hydrogen 1, 2, and 3. That's hydrogen 1 has one proton in its nucleus, and then hydrogen 2 has a proton and a neutron, and hydrogen 3 has a proton and 2 neutrons, which makes it so that's tritium. So there's hydrogen, deuterium, and tritium are the 3 forms of hydrogen that we know of. And the reason I'm talking about hydrogen here, I'm getting to a point here. This is important. This is really, really wild stuff. I was reading a UFO story, and this was about some guys trying to back engineer some a thing that they took out of a UFO. So they had this UFO, and this device inside the UFO was separable. So they took it out. They separated it out, and they took it out, and they studied it in a lab, and it was about the size of a laptop or half the size of my laptop, I would say, like a device, sort of like that big, and it put out energy like a battery would, right? So they plugged it in, and they started pulling energy out of it, electric energy, just like a battery. They're pulling energy out, pulling it out, and it just kept coming out of this thing. And I mean,
Oh,
they
wow.
could have run a house on it. They could have run an airplane on it. A lot of energy would pour out of this thing, electrical energy, but
Mhm.
it just kept doing that, like, and doing it and doing it and doing it. So they were trying to figure out, well, how does this thing work? You know, so uh, they examined it every way. One thing they discovered that was giving off a gas. So when it was giving off energy, it was also giving off this gas. They sampled the gas, and they examined it in the lab, and they found that it was hydrogen 5. This blew the top of my head off when I read that. Hydrogen 5? Are you kidding me?
What's the significance of that? Why would that be?
Well, we know of hydrogen 1, 2, and 3. I've never heard of hydrogen 4, but hydrogen 5 is outrageous. That means it would be 1 proton and 4 neutrons in the nucleus. And what this means is that the aliens have knowledge of nuclear physics that we are not even close to. If they can create an isotope like hydrogen 5, that's insane. We could not, never, there's no way we know how to do that. It's just wild stuff. So that's nuclear physics, right? And it tells you, if it's true, of course. I just read it. I don't know if it's true or not, but hydrogen 5, man, that is wild stuff. Okay, now that story though about that device that they took out of a UFO,
Yeah.
that thing, they took it out, and it was one of the few parts inside the UFO that you could actually remove. So they took it out and they started doing experiments on it. And they thought, well, okay, we want to cut it open and see what's inside. That was their mistake. Okay, so they took it to an underground bunker, and I think there was 2 guys there, and they used some kind of cutting device, and they tried to saw into this thing to figure out what was inside of it, and it went off like a nuclear bomb. Okay, and that was the nuclear explosion that killed the 2 guys at S4 that resulted in Lazar being hired to replace those guys. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
This is the story as I've heard it, and I do believe Lazar. I completely believe Lazar. I totally believe him.
Yeah, I want to believe that guy too, huh?
No damn doubt. Well, I'll tell you why I believe Lazar. I saw some evidence, okay, that's convinced me, and that is these old videos of Lazar back in the 1980s and 90s when he was a much younger man. Okay, and there are videos of him speaking at that time, and he's there's a bunch of these videos. I'll link some to you somewhere.
Okay.
When he's a young man, you hear him talk, you watch him, you hear him talk. Holy cripes, is he smart? This guy is, I'd estimate his IQ is easily over 170, and that's just the kind of guy they want to work on UFOs. That's exactly. Well, I knew a guy like that when I was in high school. I had a friend whose IQ was 185. Okay, and this guy was a lot like Bob Lazar. He was kind of peculiar, until you got to know him. He seemed a little bit strange, but when you got to know the guy, you could start to see the intensity of his mind. This was my friend Matthew in grade 11. He was he'd kind of stopped going to school. He was studying aeronautical engineering on his own. He got bored with high school. He went home and studied aeronautical engineering, and he had this up in his bedroom. Walls were covered with blueprints from aeronautical engineering, and I've never risen to that level of engineering myself. But this guy in grade 11 was at that level. He was phenomenal. Matthew, IQ 185. Then he went on and dropped out of high school and did a lot of acid in those days, which we did.
Who didn't?
Oh, in those days, we all did acid. And, yeah. But anyway, Matthew, he wound up, he stopped doing the acid. He'd experimented with that, and he thought, well, I guess I got to get a job, right? So he went back to get his high school graduation. He did the very hard calculus course in a couple of months and got 100% on the test. And then he got his high school graduation, which is all he wanted. It took him a few months to get his high school graduation, and off he went and took a course in diesel mechanics and became a diesel mechanic to make his living. And that's Matthew. And he went on through his life as just making a living as a diesel mechanic, but doing all his other things too. He's so much like Bob Lazar. He was a good friend of mine in high school. I mean, I taught him how to ride a motorcycle. I introduced him to his first tokes on marijuana. He introduced me to my first acid trip. Okay, this was a pretty good buddy of mine, and he was a lot like Bob Lazar. I tell you, a lot like him, and that's why I believe Bob Lazar, because I've seen the early Lazar talking about general relativity, which I have some understanding of, and Lazar is talking about general GR, we call it, and he's talking about gravity in GR and gravity waves. All this theoretical physics, which I have some knowledge of. I'm not a physicist really, but I've studied a lot of that stuff too, eh? And I've listened to Lazar talking about all this stuff when he was a younger man, and oh yeah, I believe Lazar. He is what he says. He did what he says he did at S4. I believe that entirely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too, man. Hey, Bim Jim, do you happen to smoke the devil's lettuce? Because Thin Lizzy wants to smoke with you one of these times.
Oh, well, I experimented with drugs for a period of my life. It was 17 to 23. I took 5 acid trips in that time and a DMT. I took DMT once.
Damn, you hit hard.
Oh yeah, I tried. I tried a couple other ones too, those powerful psychedelics. Tried them. I
Jim
tried them.
Jim goes hard.
But then you see, I was 23. I wanted to get my career going. I got back into my engineering career, shaved my beard, of course, my hair, my fro, shaved my so I could get a job. Right. I went back to work and got into a career and did that for quite a long time. And I never got too much back into the drugs. Over the years, I have tried a little bit of dope and hash and this that, but I now know I kind of experimented with all that stuff and dropped it and said, okay, I've done that. I dropped that and I go on to something else, right?
Well, now
Like
you've-
meditation and controlling your own mind, so you can see beyond reality with your mind by meditation and all these methods rather than taking drugs. Because no, I talk about this stuff to young people here. I give talks and we go out in the forest, we have a campfire, we sit around, we talk about these things. I'm talking to these young people, right? And I'm saying, well, you know um I don't recommend the drugs, the heavy drugs. Nah, not really. I mean, you can do that with your own mind if you learn to control your own mind through meditation and more. There's more than meditation that I've done. There's things beyond meditation as well. And I don't know. I can talk about that now if you want, but because I give these talks up in the forest, right? Sitting
that's
around the
pretty.
campfire. Hey, you know what happened one day? This was just crazy insane. But there's a bunch of us guys. These are all guys sitting around a big campfire. There's like eight guys, and one of these guys, he dresses up a Sasquatch suit because he's like 6'9" or something like that. And these are all mostly big young guys, right? We're sitting around campfire just shooting the shit in the middle of the day, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and a flipping bear comes running out of the forest and runs right behind this guy. And I'm looking, I watch the bear come from my left to my right. It runs right behind the guy across from me. And everybody yells bear, everybody yells out bear, bear, bear,
How
right?
many people were there?
About 8 of us. We're
Okay.
all guys, mostly healthy young guys, except for myself. But but anyways,
All tripping on
all-
acid?
no.
Oh,
No,
so
we
it
were
was a
all-
real bear. It was a real bear.
Oh, flipping right. So it was a real bear. This is why these are true stories. When I tell my experiences, these are all very true stories, man. Not on drugs, not dreams. This happened. Okay, so everybody yells bear, and all in unison, we all jumped up and chased the bear. We didn't run away from it. We chased it. We flipping chased it just automatically without a thought. We chased this bear.
Really?
And I grabbed my camera and I ran after the bear with my camera. And I managed to get a few pics of it, but we're all chasing the bear and saying, "Hey, bear, come on!" And I was saying, "Oh, come on, bear, come on back. We like you. Come back, bear."
Oh
We're
my God,
chasing
that
this
bear was
flipping
like,
bear
what
through
the?
the forest.
Right.
This was hilarious, and it was so spontaneous too. Right? I mean, it was totally spontaneous. Nobody gave a second thought. It was all anybody just jumped up and chased the bear. Yeah, this is how it is here. These are all people
Oh
who live
my
in the forest,
God.
and I have lived in the forest without guns. I'll tell you too. I'll just mention this. This is a difference here among these people and myself is that we never had guns, and we lived in the forest, right? No gun. You don't need a gun. We figure. I mean, I never needed one. And so some of these people lived in the forest for 12 years, summer and winter. And in the winter, they would dig down, make a pit house underneath the ground. One guy had a beautiful pit house he built, and he lived underground in the winter. And he had a stove down there that he made himself out of rock and concrete and all this. And oh, it's beautiful. And then the other people, they lived in teepees or they lived just under tarps through the winter. It doesn't get that cold here in the winter. The temperature minimum go down to about what would you say in Fahrenheit? About 15 Fahrenheit is the absolute minimum. So it doesn't get that cold here. And so these my point is these people live in the forest and uh, they don't have guns. And you listen to some of these Sasquatch hunters. or David Paulides, these people, and they say, "Oh, you got to have a gun. Oh, got to have a gun. Got to have a radio tracker, satellite tracker, and all this shit. And you got to go with buddies and all this shit, man." I went and lived alone up in the mountains,
Yeah.
and I wandered around through the old growth forest. No gun, nothing, just a stick. All I had was a damn stick.
Yeah.
These people, you see, and what happens is, this is very significant because it depends on your mental attitude, how you approach the forest. And I developed a trust for the forest because, I got in and out of trouble in the forest. I almost died a few times, but I learned, and I thought, okay, I got to be careful, and I know how to survive in the forest. Okay. I mean, I don't fear the forest. I trust the forest, and I developed this slowly over time. And so when I listen to Dave Paulides, who I like very much and I respect very much, and that other guy on Steve on How to Hunt,
Mhm.
and I listen to these guys, and I mean, that's great. I mean, I'd like to have a gun too. I just never been able to afford one. So my friends have guns. I've shot all kinds of guns, actually, my friends' guns, but I just don't see the need for one when I'm walking through the forest, unless I'm looking for food. If I want to get, I've been hunting for deer and stuff with friends, and by all means, I got nothing against that. But
Good morning,
yeah,
Chupacabra.
but you
Hi.
see,
Good morning.
this creates your attitude.
What's up?
Bim, I'm loving this story, by the way. This is
Oh,
really
you want
good
me to
stuff.
carry? I can carry on.
Please do. I'm really interested in the missing 411 Dave Paulides stuff. This is very, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, and also you see the point I'm trying to make here is it depends. Okay, you have a deep attitude when you walk into the forest. Okay, you have this kind of deep attitude that you may not be aware of, but that influences what you see and what you experience. Okay, so these guys like Paulides and Steve, they walk into the forest with a different attitude. They have a gun across their chest. They're holding this powerful weapon. They can kill anything. I've even imagined. I thought, I've imagined that. I've walked through the forest with a gun, even though I can't legally own one. I have done that, and I understand that. But I started out originally just wandering around in the old growth up at the high elevation, and not seeing any danger, and walking further and further the more I went. And I didn't see any danger at all, really, no problem. And from time to time, I'd meet a bear, and mostly the black bear here. We don't have grizzlies, but the black bear are quite friendly, and if you learn their ways, they treat you like a male black bear will treat me like another male black bear, and they do bluff charges and all this stuff, and they stand up and their fur sticks up on it and all this stuff. Well, you stand up back at them and you wave your arms in the air and you scream at them, and they turn around and walk away, and that's cool. You've had your little. That's the way male bears interact, right? It's their interaction, and I've done that many times with wild bears, and I have not been in danger. Now, I've taken some chances myself personally, and I don't recommend that everybody do this. I don't want to recommend that everybody do what I do, because I could have died a lot of times when I was up in the forest wandering around. I know I put myself in danger, but I'm telling you, that's what I did, and I did survive it. And looking back on it now, I see that I was doing what I was doing. I was kind of in the native way of trusting the forest and, walking through it, So like in the native knowledge, this comes from my study of anthropology. You've got, before the Europeans got here, so the native people lived here, and they had tribes, and they had laws and all this, and history and science and everything. They had all that stuff, really. And they had laws. And like, if a young man, a teenager, was acting up, being an a-hole, committing crimes, the punishment to him was he would be banished from the tribe, and he would be sent out away. Tell him to go out in the forest and live out there for 2 weeks. And if you come back alive, you have learned something. That was their
They say
attitude.
that the fear of excommunication and banishment and judgment is greater than the fear of death in people. And I believe that's from our evolutionary journey through tribalism to where we are now. That these things still hold true in human psychology. People do not want to be banished.
Yep. That is correct.
It's a bummer. Yeah. It's a bummer, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey guys, I have to play something. It's part of our commercial that we have to play here. That I want to play it before Jamie has to go, and I know she's at work. So, this is something that if you guys missed it, this was played on the butt stuff episode that was this past weekend. That one time I was abducted by aliens, where I was the guest for the show. So if you guys missed it, this is a little portion that was played during that, and you'll have to go back and watch the rest of the episode to see everything else. But this was on butt stuff. So stay tuned for the wedding. God. The wedding should be just as exciting.
I don't know why every time I hear that, I just imagine Chad with the saxophone blasting away.
I know, when I heard that sax part, I'm like, I could play that. That's not even that hard.
Hell yes.
That image was so delicate when they was kissing. It was so delicate.
Oh, so pure. Jake, what's up, dude? You got to be at work.
It's very heartfelt and emotional.
Every time I see it. Okay, so we can continue on with the the very intellectual talk that we were having before this. Our date.
Is Jake the brother of Chad?
He's
Chad
my cousin.
Smith, Jake Smith? Cousin,
yeah, he's
cool.
He's my cousin, but yeah, we just call him Jake Smith.
Great. Huh. You know how I figured that out? You both got the same last name. I just took a guess. Eh?
Same last name, and we look pretty. We look pretty similar. My beard doesn't go all the way up.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that's my cousin.
Yeah,
he's the man.
So, Chupacabra.
That was a really good edit.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, it was so good.
That whole show was really cool. She did a lot of work on that.
A fan. You got a fan right now.
Absolutely.
What were you saying, Ben?
Oh, Chupacabra. So, have you studied some anthropology?
Yeah.
Oh,
some.
good.
I'm very interested in the human story, and then obviously alien rapper hybrids piqued my interest, and then all kinds of other stuff. But yeah. I'm really into it. And then it's interesting now that some of these people like Lou and all these other people, they're kind of branching off into more historical stuff when they're talking about UFOs. They're really getting into like the human journey and when we were altered and the theories that we were, tweaked and all this other stuff. It's very, very interesting because I think it does kind of come full circle. And there's a real weird connection between things like Bigfoot and UFOs, where traditionally I don't think anyone would think that on the surface level. But here we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have. Excuse me.
Hitting that good shit.
Oh, that happens. Goes down the wrong pipe there, buddy.
Uh-oh.
Oh, but anyway, though, UFOs and Bigfoots.
See you, Jamie.
Oh yeah. Are you
I
aware of?
Hmm?
Have you ever heard of these connections?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here's what I figure about the aliens and the Sasquatch. Okay, so
Throw
like
it at us.
the fact is that Bigfoot eat Earth food. They eat Earth food, don't they? Which means that they must have been here for a long time. Because I mean, if you look at what's in food, I mean, there's all kinds of pathogens, viruses, and bacteria, and all that stuff. And you have your immune system, which defends you against the food, right? So if you went to another planet, I figure if you went to another planet that had vegetation and stuff that evolved differently, if you took a
Mhm.
bite out of something, it'd kill you instantly because you would have no defense against it. Anyway, so we see that Bigfoot eats Earth food. That's important. Now,
I've never heard any confirmation about what they eat. I know that people
Oh.
claim they found like
they've been
Bigfoot.
seen. Bigfoot's been seen catching ducks with a stick
Oh.
and carrying off dead ducks and
Very
deer.
interesting.
And deer, of course, they kill deer and carry them off. And
Yep.
oh yeah,
What a
I'm
sight.
sure. I'm sure they eat Earth food, whereas a
Okay.
ghost doesn't. A ghost doesn't eat Earth food. I never heard of an alien eating an apple or anything like that.
And
But so
aliens
okay,
traditionally have small mouths too, so they can't really do much.
they probably take in some liquid or other for their energy. Who knows what? But they're manufactured, I think. But anyways, the Bigfoots. Okay, so like. This means they have evolved on Earth. They've been on Earth for a long time. But I figure this is my own idea that
Go for it.
Bigfoots have been brought to this time by aliens. So some aliens have brought Bigfoot through time
Interesting.
back to Earth again. This from Earth to Earth, but through time. And that's my theory on the connection between aliens and Bigfoots.
I love
And-
it. Can
and-
I throw a theory at you, Ben?
Pardon me?
Can I throw a theory at you about Bigfoot?
Yeah.
All right. So I think it's very interesting, right? So you look into it from like a biological standpoint. You want to find evidence that there's this giant animal. And then you find lots of human stories that there's this animal all over the place. Big ape man kind of thing. Every continent has one. I think even George Knapp explained this, but he said probably the only place that he didn't know there was a sighting of a Bigfoot-like creature was Hawaii. So they're everywhere. But yet we don't have any physical evidence for them. And then we got Skinwalker Ranch stories about them seeing little portal wormholes opening up and having Bigfoot crawl out of these fucking things, right? Sorry for my language, but they crawl out of them and then they obviously appear and disappear at will out of nowhere. So there's this association there. There's also a lot of people who claim, that let's say Bigfoot is a kind of a spirit. There's a lot of indigenous people who claim that it's a spirit that protects their people, that it's a spirit that it's a forest spirit. And then a lot of stories of these things kind of materializing out of nowhere too. So they have this property to them that's kind of not of the natural world. You know what I mean? They don't seem to follow certain processes. Like we don't find their bones. We don't find their evidence of their activities too much. And then they appear with orbs. They appear with craft. They appear with weird kind of light phenomena too. So I don't know. I would assume that they're not from this dimension, that they're from somewhere else, and then they pop in and pop out. And either they are some type of avatar that an alien would use to interact with the three-dimensional world that we live in. They can get in and get out, or it's itself interdimensional like creature that's intelligent that somehow figured out how to slip through the borders between whatever separates us.
Seems like that would make a lot more sense from what we've heard.
That's also possible. Yeah.
We know how animals work, and we look for evidence of a large mammal like that, and we just don't find too much of it. But it's a real thing. What we do find, that's why I think Missing 411 is so interesting, because here we have cases where this guy David Paulides has poured over this evidence and not just found every missing person in the national park, but found the missing people in these places that match a certain profile where they disappear out of thin air. People go out in search groups and scour these areas, and then 10 years later, these missing people's clothes show up, folded and neatly packed or whatever, like they never were missing for a day, in the exact same spot where they were searching. So there's all this phenomena, all this weirdness, all this high strangeness surrounding Bigfoot, and I think that it's got to be otherworldly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think so. Pilates, yeah, he's onto something out of this universe. I don't. Okay, if you're looking for the entity or the bad guy who steals the kids and takes people, makes them missing. Well, I don't think it's Bigfoot. No, I think there's a lot of entities out there. A lot of them. Like I described the predator, the invisible thing. That's different. That's not a Bigfoot. And I think there's a lot of other entities out there. Oh gosh. Well, you see,
I agree.
They're aliens. We call them aliens, and they fly around flying saucers in the nuts and bolts version of that. But if there's two intelligent species in the universe, meaning humans and the aliens, then if there's two in 10, was it 10 to the 23rd planet, something like that? If there's two intelligent species, there must be millions at least. Okay, and there's very likely 100 of different kinds of these entities visiting Earth from they could come here through time, or from another nearby parallel universe, or from space in spaceships. We don't know this stuff. Okay, this is what we don't know. But yeah, absolutely, any of these things are possible. And Chupacabra, I don't know if you heard some of my other times I've been on here. I talked about.
No, I haven't.
Oh, I've been through portals. This is my specialty.
Yeah, I have portals, man.
Talking to the man.
I have personally been through portals probably 16 times. I didn't just see a portal. I went right in it and wound up in another nearby parallel universe, which is very similar to this one.
Can I ask you a question? Can you bring somebody with you when you go to a portal? So like say somebody's a skeptic. I'm just saying, and you go through a portal, and you bring somebody with you to show them that the portal is real in reality.
I never tried that. No.
Do you think it's possible?
I think it's entirely possible that a whole carload of people could drive through a portal. See, because I drove through the portals on my motorcycle, dirt bike, or single in passenger. One of my pickups or my 4x4 that I used for camping purposes. I went through portals many, many times. And I realized after a couple of times, holy cow, I'm going through these portals, even though I didn't know the name of the portal, but I didn't know the word portal, but I knew I was going someplace really weird. So I packed up my camping gear in my truck.
Smart.
And I would go out and you see, I was alone, but I think going through a portal requires a certain consciousness. It's I think I was using my consciousness to go through portals. That's how I went through them, was via consciousness. Okay, so I've meditated. I mean, I learned about meditation when I was a teenager, and I discovered more about meditation and consciousness, right? And I say that our consciousness is not local to our cranium. We can move it outside of our cranium sometimes. I mean, and this is on the native people did this, the indigenous peoples over the world, they had these abilities to move their consciousness outside of their cranium, okay? Or that would be shape-shifting. I have shape-shifted. I've done it. And it was a case where my consciousness went into a bear and I became the bear for a little while. And I realized at the time when I looked at my arm and I saw it was a bear, and I looked down my side, I saw, gee, I'm a bear now. And I realized that I had shapeshifted. And I thought, well, now what am I going to do as a bear? And I decided I want to get out of this bear. So I jumped up in the air. And it was with my consciousness, with my intent, I pulled myself out of the bear, out of the shapeshift. So I had somehow, with my consciousness,
like Jonah from the whale,
pulled myself into the bear and then out of the bear.
And this is not, I'm not making fun of this question at all. when you become the bear, can you, when you try to speak when you're the bear, does the speak still comes out like a bear sound, or can you actually
You gotta do sign language.
I was only that bear for a matter of maybe 30 seconds.
30 seconds? Okay.
Long enough because my mind was operating completely normally as it is right now. I was not on drugs or anything like that, right? I was just thinking consciously, and I was looking at myself, my own body, and I was saying, holy cow, I'm a bear. How could this happen?
Let me ask you a question.
Yep.
Are you familiar with the work of Dolores Cannon?
No.
She's done some, I don't know, she's a hypnotist, a channelist. She's done some work with some people, like past life regression. And she has a lot of interesting things to say about people who experience life as a different animal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, she talks about their perspective and what it was like to see from their eyes, to see in different wavelengths of light, to hear different sounds. And it was very, very interesting. Very eye-opening discussion she has.
Have any of you guys seen the movies from the 80s called Beastmaster?
Long
I know it's an old cheesy 80s movie where he can look through animals. And one of the animals he look through is an eagle because they can see through everything. So what I'm asking is, like, can you kind of pick and choose in a way of being in an animal for 30 seconds or less, like, or is it just like luck of the draw, or are you afraid that if you stay too long into an animal that you're not going to be able to, jump back out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a person can develop their ability, that ability. They can develop it, they can learn it and get better at it. And so that, yes, absolutely. And the native people knew these things, right? They knew this stuff. Oh yeah. And that I started learning from the native people. Well, when I was a kid, I played with native kids. We built tree houses and played army and all this stuff, and what kids do, right? But I was always always knew some native people, and I would listen to them, and I recommend, if you're sitting there with some native person, they start talking, listen, just listen, because sometimes they will say things and you will learn these things. Okay, so my local native people are called the Shishal, and they have knowledge.
Jim, are you up there in Canada?
Yes, I'm on the coast, right near the ocean in Canada, West Coast. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, the Shishal people, and so I've become very friendly with them. I worked for the chief for a while and stuff like that, right? And a few times I've encountered the knowledge keepers that are also called storytellers of the Shishal, and when they start talking, I shut up and I listen hard, because they'll go into a trance. Okay, so this is what a knowledge keeper does. They go into a trance and they start reciting knowledge, like they're reading an encyclopedia. They're reciting knowledge, going on and on. And this is how I learned some stuff. Learned some amazing stuff. From one guy, I learned how to make myself invisible. I got detailed instructions. Here's how you make yourself invisible. You do this.
You got like talents on talents.
And then I did it, and it works. And I taught another person of mine, a non-native person. I taught her how to make herself invisible, and she did it right in front of my eyes. Okay, so this is how
Benjamin.
Yeah.
Coral's got a question she wanted to ask you, or ask someone on here. Go ahead, Coral.
Yeah, thanks. Because I'm new to this, I'm not used to this, so I'm scared of interrupting. But I was going to say, with the portals, what do you see? Do you see anything, or do you have a strong feeling?
Well, yeah, it depends. Okay, before I find a portal, I'm feeling a certain way. I'm feeling a kind of random I don't know where the hell I'm going. I'll just drive over here, drive over there. I come to a corner. I'll go right or left. That's how I have excuse me. This is how I have found the portals, when I am in that feeling or in that mental mode where I just don't give a crap. I'm just going any old place. I'll go over here, go over there. I'm just randomly going around just looking at stuff, and presto, I see a portal, and I think, oh, what's that? And I drive right into it. Now, the first two portals appeared to me as a green wall at the side of a dirt road where there's forest on the side of the road, and then I'd be going along, driving along, and I'd see this this green wall that did not look normal. So I slow right down. I look at this green wall.
Oh, what kind of material was the wall? Are we talking like a stone wall?
No,
Yeah.
okay, no, it's leaves, green leaves.
Oh, like a wall
Leaves.
of green.
Yes, undergrowth. But it looks peculiar, so I slow down to take a closer look at it,
Whoa.
and I see a hole in it, and I look in the hole, and I see a trail in there, and I drive right in, and that's how I went through portals. Now, I've always done that. Only done that alone because I have to see, if I'm with someone, their mind will be interfering with my mind. Their consciousness will be interfering with my consciousness. But when I'm controlling my own consciousness, that's the times I've done it. Okay, for me personally, although quick
question, Bim. Do you, when you're going these portals, you know, it seems more like a threshold. You're kind of passing through like an invisible barrier, but there is a symbolic barrier there of this wall of green. When you get to the other side, what's there? What are you at? What's that like? What do you see?
Well, things look sort of normal.
Okay.
But they're not normal. Okay, there'll be odd things. Like in one case, I went through that portal on my dirt bike, and I saw the green wall, and I looked in there in the dark, into the dark hole, and I saw, oh, there's a trail in there. So I just turned my dirt bike. I went in there, and the next thing I know, I was in a different place. I was on a big wide road, a gravel road, which was not there. It was a huge road, and we don't have big roads like that up there in that area at all, and nothing like that anywhere. There was this huge road, and I'm riding down it on my dirt bike, and I'm looking straight ahead, and I can see way down this straight flat road. You can see way down there, a couple of miles, and it looks nice down there, and I'm attracted to it. So I just keep riding along, and then I tried to vary from. It was almost as I was being pulled towards the end of this road. And when I tried to not go, like at one point I tried to turn around and look behind me, and it was like really difficult. I had to really force myself to turn around. And so as long as I just kept cruising along this road at 30 miles an hour on my dirt bike, as long as I just did that, which was, I was being compelled to do that, and headed towards this thing off in the distance. As long as I kept doing that, I was okay. And so I just did that, and I got other things happen. There's a tape. There's a video about that on my YouTube page where I tell that entire story.
What about time travel? Can you use a portal to time travel?
I think so. When I was on the other side of the portal, many times I visited different nearby parallel universes, and in some of those I could have been in a different time. I don't really know, but I did see one time when I was on the other side of the portal, I saw an old-fashioned logging operation, and it was about a few hundred yards away from me. I saw this logging operation, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, well, that's weird. It looks old-fashioned, and all the machines were black, right? And I've watched logging operations. I know something about it. And now all the machines are always painted yellow. It's the law, right? But I'm looking off, and I see this logging operation, but all the machines are black. Well, that would be from a different time, right? And I slowed right down, and I'm looking at this. I'm thinking, well, what the hell is that, you know? And then there was a bunch of guys standing around in work clothes. And they were in between me and the machines, and their backs were to me. They were watching the machines. Now, one of the guys turned around and looked at me, and he saw me. And when he saw me, his face lit up in the biggest smile you could imagine. And he raised his arm to wave at me. And then some of the other guys turned around and looked in my direction because he was talking to them, obviously. But I think what I was seeing there was a ghost logging operation. I think that's what I saw. And I think that is the nearby parallel universe I was in. I was in one that is populated by ghosts, I
Let me ask
believe.
you this.
So
Let's
there's
get
a
nerdy
lot of
here.
stories. There's a lot of different stories about people traveling to different dimensions and stuff
Yeah, but
like this.
let's get nerdy here for a second. Let's get nerdy. Let's just have fun. Let's get nerd. Now, you say you can. Like you said, you're saying you can. Now, the question is, should you? So what I'm saying is, do we have the right to time travel and change stuff in the future that's already been written, or going to a parallel universe, screwing up their timeline? You know, what I mean is like, okay, I met my wife, we have kids. What if you went back in time and screwed that up somehow where I don't meet my wife? What I'm saying is,
I don't think that's how it works.
No, you don't think that's how it works?
No, that's not how it works. So you can't go back in time and change anything.
Because like everybody has different theories, and no offense to you or anybody, nobody has 100% proof of truth of exactly on how time travel works and what can it do, what can it not do.
It's a hypothetical scenario, right? But it's rooted in science. So we can determine a couple different things when we look back on time travel. So
and I'm just asking. I'm not. Don't think I'm debugging anything. I'm not.
For sure.
Curious.
So
I
think one of the best theories I've heard, because obviously no one knows for sure. So I'll phrase it this way: one of the best theories I've heard. When you look about time travel, obviously there's that concept, the Back to the Future concept, where you could go back in time and make sure your parents never met, and then you go back to your time, and now you're being erased from photographs and whatnot. I believe what the leading theory now is, when you go back in time, if you could do that, what you would be doing is creating an alternative branch of time. So
I was about to say that.
If you get into a time machine and leave this world right now, what you come back to wouldn't be this world. You'd never come back here. What you would go back to would be the continuing branch of the thing, whatever you messed up with in the past. So you'd create these branches. And that's kind of the idea, because it would be impossible. It's harder, I think, for physicists to rationalize how you would disappear from every photograph on the planet Earth. That in and of itself would require so much energy from the universe to go through and erase these things from all of our memories and all of our physical evidence of you. That's why I think they resolve themselves to the theory that if you go back in time, what you return to, if you could return, would be an alternative branch based on whatever you altered in that other thing.
I want to say something real quick.
Real quick, I just wanted to validate your question. I think there is a moral question. I don't know what the answer is, but there might be a moral question of should we be traveling through time? That's a good question.
Gypsy, about the
Sorry.
morals. The native people have morals. They have rules and laws and stuff because for those native people who have these abilities, they have laws and morals about what they're doing. So the native people, they see through time, for example, or they might, they meet spirit animals and this and that, but they have laws and morals about what you can and cannot do. You see, and like I'm breaking those morals right now when I give you this knowledge, because some of this I'm telling you is the secret knowledge. And I wrote online one of my stories, the one about the bear and the shape-shifting, and a native woman wrote back to me, and she was really angry at me. She says, "You cannot tell that story online. That is the secret knowledge. You must not say that. That is very bad to reveal the secret knowledge." Okay.
I want to hear what Josh was about to say, because Josh has something on his mind. I really want to hear what he's going to say.
Okay, I'll shut up.
I was just going to give a little credence to the whole multiverse thing with branching off, because, I mean, like you said, nobody knows all the answers to this. But say if you were to do it by that, like Back to the Future logic, if you were to erase every memory, like every photograph of you from that picture, you'd essentially be creating branch timelines just doing that, because every person you've ever interacted with through your life, they'd be living a completely, totally different reality. If you're following what I'm getting with that, that's all I want to say on that page.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's speaking to Bim's case here, like on the surface, I gotta be honest, Bim, I've never heard you talk. So on the surface, it sounds so hard to swallow, this idea of portals and you traveling. But when I think back on it, there's MUFON cases and other cases that I've read that mirror this almost exactly. I can't recall the case number, but basically there's a story of like 4 college girls driving around on a little road trip. They're going to go somewhere like super simple. They want to go to like, I think, a beach or something. And on the way, they find a fork in the road, and then they decide to take like the scenic route. And they think they're going to be driving through like farmland and stuff. But as they go through it, they feel some kind of, they said they felt like static in the air. Something weird was happening. And then they ended up driving to this place that wasn't what the sign said it would be. They come up to a restaurant that the sign is weird. The people outside are standing by cars, and they're kind of hanging out. And as they approach the restaurant, they realize that the language on the sign is not, they can't make it out. And the people are kind of blurry. They're hard to see. And as they drive by, one girl sticks her head out the window and looks at the people. And when she gets back in the car, apparently she was white as a ghost. She just said, drive, 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 drive. So they drive. The girl ends up telling the rest of the girls in the car that what she saw was like not human. They weren't human. They end up getting back onto a road and getting back on the thing, but they can never find this spot again. It just seemed like they had accidentally passed through into some other place. And as weird as that sounds, I mean, it does kind of match your story, Bim. Like, you know, whatever these other dimensions are, whatever they might be, timelines or whatever, they could be existing parallel to us. And the difference between us or here and there could be an effort of consciousness as opposed to an effort of some physical science or some you know, traveling through a physical space. Like if your brain is picking up a different frequency, you might be picking up a different reality around you. And, you know, that's not to say that there isn't physical locations with electromagnetic anomalies that could allow for something like this to happen in your mind. But I don't know.
I have one quick thing real quick on top of that. Chad and Spooky, they've been saying this. I've been thinking a lot here lately. I don't know where it came from, but people are saying like that the Earth's poles are shifting. If that's real, I keep wondering if maybe like the pole shifting are making the veils thinner, and if these these portals and vortexes, maybe the magnetic field is collapsing, and
Josh,
you know, like making these vortexes. You know, I don't know where it came from. It's just a theory that I have.
I think you're right. I think you're dead on that. The poles, according to a lot of people, are shifting. This happens every so often, and we can go into that if you guys want to. But the poles are shifting, and the areas in which it's shifting tends to be kind of constant. So look at North America. There are a lot of electromagnetic anomalies in North America. And if you look at wind maps online, you can see all these swirling storms right around North America, Canada. This is exactly where the tornado alley is. And tornadoes and hurricanes, these are electromagnetic anomalies. So there's a lot of tension right around here. They say the old North Pole was right around like Anchorage, Alaska. That's why, if you guys are familiar, the Ice Age had an ice shelf all the way down to the American-Canadian border. That's where the ice shelf was. We're talking a mile-high amount of ice. And so 12,500 years ago, whenever the Ice Age ended, it ended very quickly. And all that ice flooded the North American plains, which is why we have the scablands and all the plains. It's basically a washout area. So these things are shifting all the time, and the poles are shifting all the time. North America is a highly hot magnetic area. It goes from being the North Pole to near the North Pole a lot. And, you know, I think it's very interesting. I do believe that electromagnetic anomalies are thinning the veil, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Hey, can we get to Brassel's question before it gets too late? He wanted to know how you come back from the other side if you go through a portal.
Good question.
In my case?
Yes, sir.
I think you're the only one with experience.
You got a lot of experience.
I will tell you. Oh, absolutely, man. Because this is something I know. I don't want to speculate too far away from what I know and what I experienced. And I wanted to say something first before I answer your question, that around this area where I found the portals, there is a little mountain. It's about 3,000 feet high, and it appears to be solid rock. So this is like Ayers Rock or something like that. It's a really big rock. And that might have something to do with EM anomalies, electromagnetic anomalies. Okay, I want to say that. Now, also, you asked, how do I get back from being on the other side of the portal? Well, okay. I camped up there for a few days, and I knew bloody well I was in a different kind of universe. And I decided, okay, it's time to go home.
What's up, girl?
So I would pack up all my gear into my truck, and I would head back towards home. So I would have an idea in my mind, an intent in my consciousness that I wanted to go home now, right? So I'm driving along in on a road that is unfamiliar to me because I'm on the other side of a portal. I'm driving along on a road that's unfamiliar to me, but I have this intent in my mind that I want to go home. And suddenly I'm on a road far away. I've been moved through space.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 or 3, 4 miles to a place that I recognize completely, and I'm headed home. And I just go home, right? So it's how I got out of the portal was simply by consciousness, simply by deciding, okay, it's time to go home, and away I go. I'm driving along, and I get home. Now, it was not always that way because, like I said, I was on the other side of these portals. Maybe, oh boy, how many times? 8, 9, I don't know, something like that. I'd have to add them all up. I tried to the other day, but when I want to go home, I simply establish that intent in my mind, and I got to, of course, anybody would do this wherever you are. Wherever you might be, you might think, okay, I'm going home now, and you have an image in your mind of home, and you head back home, right? Well, that's all I did, really. I was in unfamiliar territory where there was some weird stuff going on, like invisible entities poking them with a stick, and like ghost logging operations and weird stuff like that. I was in that sort of a place, and I just thought, well, okay, I'll go home now. I pack up all my camping gear, back in the truck, away I go. I head for where I think home should be, and presto, I'm on a road that I recognize, and it's going straight home. I'm going straight home, right? These are all logging roads I'm talking about. There's a maze of gravel roads up in the mountains here. This is the kind of landscape I'm in, right? But I just think, okay, I'm going home now, and I head home, and presto, I'm in a place I recognize, and I go right home. Now, Chris Bledsoe told about. He has a story very similar to that, where he was with a group. Pardon me?
You know Chris Bledsoe? I'm sorry, you said poke him with a stick. That was so funny.
What?
I didn't know that you knew Chris Bledsoe, and I said when you said you were poking invisible entities with a stick, I thought it was so hilarious.
This is Chris Bledsoe told this story on. He was being interviewed. He was being interviewed online, and I listened to him. I live on the other side of the continent from you guys and Chris, but he was online. He told the story right out of his mouth, and I believe Chris Bledsoe. I believe what he says. So anyway, he's telling the story, and the story was that he went with a group of people ghost hunting. Now, he was not terribly interested in ghost hunting, but he tagged along with this group of people, and they had their meters, and all that stuff. And there was a derelict house somewhere around in their area, and this is in Chris's area, and they all went to the house. And they went inside, and Chris kind of stood in the background because he wasn't much interested and just kind of hanging around. And anyways, then it came time to leave and go home. Okay, so they walked out the front door, across the old lawn, which was now a field of long grass. They walked across that, and then a group of them, there's like 8 people or something, they came to a ditch or in front of them, and they looked down, and there was water in the ditch, and it looked like, how are they going to cross this barrier? Okay, so they're all standing there looking at that, and presto, they were in a different location all of a sudden, just as I have experienced. Chris describes this very clearly in simple words. He says, suddenly they were walking down this road under a power line, which he knows very well, and took them straight home. And that's exactly what I experienced. Exactly what Chris describes is what I have experienced multiple times, where you are translated through space, apparently, instantaneously.
This kind of lines up with my theory about the dino beaver. You guys familiar with the dino beaver?
No.
Nope, never heard of that one.
So the Skinwalker Ranch, there's a sighting of this creature. So you guys are familiar with Skinwalker Ranch?
Everybody is.
All right, so recently there was a book by James Latatsky, Colin Kelleher, and George Knapp called Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. And what they kind of talk about in that book is a lot of government operations at Skinwalker, and then obviously some weird creepy shit with Hitchhiker Effect, following some of these agents, yada yada. But it's all confirmed. These are CIA guys, so this is legit. they were able to declassify some of this stuff, and what they talk about in there is pretty wild. One of the experiences, James or Colm Kelleher was with Bigelow and another reporter, and they were hanging out at nighttime outside the ranch, kind of sitting around looking and watching for things to happen. Eventually, this creature comes rumbling out of the bushes, and he described it as like a 150-pound animal. It was basically a miniature stegosaurus. I think he said it was more mammal-like, but it was kind of like a stegosaurus shape, and it had big bony plates sticking out of its back. Its tail was flat like a beaver, and it kind of walked by them and walked along this fence line, went behind this structure, and they chased after it. Once it went behind the structure, they kind of like looked at each other like, holy crap, what was that? And then they run to go to look for it. When they get there, it's gone. But they both saw it. They both described the exact same thing to a T. And so the claim is that a creature that doesn't exist in this world walked by them in this area, the Skinwalker Ranch, which is known for all these anomalous activities and all these cryptids that show up there. So my main theory on something like that would be, here's an animal from somewhere else that wandered its way into our world seamlessly and then wandered out, which tells me, what obviously it's a theory based on a theory, so let's not get too cocky here, but it tells me that there are natural phenomena that can allow for this type of thing to happen, number one. Number two, the places where these things are coming from obviously operate. There might be places so similar to our universe that they operate in the same way. This animal walks on solid ground. This animal evolved to scurry along the ground or rummage through branches. It is part of an evolutionary tree. It's part of an ecosystem. It's part of a biosphere that is similar enough to ours to when it wandered through this portal or whatever it wandered through, it could breathe the air and walk on the ground and interact with light and do all the things that we can do. So there must be places close to us that operate so similarly to have animals that evolve in a way that could be like our animals, but just different. And maybe there are a lot of animals like that. And maybe there are animals that are part of our universe right now, part of our biosphere right now, that wandered in, and vice versa. So I often wonder if there are alternative universes or alternative whatever we want to call it, dimensions, and they're similar, and we can get there back and forth. Let's say these UFOs are getting there back and forth, then there is an obvious bridge there. And wherever there's a bridge, wherever there's a way, I believe nature finds a means to get there. So like essentially, if there's a food source somewhere, an animal will evolve a way to get there and get it. That's just a fact. That's how life works. It's so pervasive and it's so much like water. It will find crevices and cracks to be in. And so like if it's possible for us to transfer between worlds, then it must be possible for an animal to evolve a way to do it naturally. And so you got to wonder if there's an animal, if maybe an intelligent being, maybe a creature, maybe just a regular old animal like an octopus or a spider. Where the fuck did these things come from? And human,
what's up, Connor?
So it's just so interesting. You got to wonder, maybe there's natural ways to get back and forth. Bim seems to have found one. Drugs are a way to get to different worlds and see different things. And obviously, whatever this dino beaver did to wander into the Skinwalker Ranch, it didn't seem like it intended to do it.
I've seen one of those too.
A dino beaver?
Can I ask you?
No, not exactly. But I was with a bunch of people, and an animal, a creature, swam underneath us. We were standing on a dock looking down into the ocean. We could see the bottom of the ocean there. It was very clear water. Okay. And this creature swam underneath us, and this is like 12 people, right? And this thing swam right underneath us. We had a perfect view of it, but it could not exist in this time. What it appeared to be was a Dogon. You know what the Dogon is? It was like
Dogon tribe.
No. It's an animal. It's a mammal that lives down in Florida, in the ocean down in Florida. It's a mammal down there.
Like a manatee?
Yes, a manatee. Same thing.
A manatee.
Manatee. Same thing. Manatee. Okay, we saw this thing, and it swam right underneath us. It was exactly the shape as a manatee, but it was flipping huge. I mean, it was the size of a small whale.
Well,
We all saw it.
There is an animal that's the size of a whale, but it's a manatee. It's called it's extinct, but that's a very interesting name. Now I got to look it up. Give me 1 second. But go on with the story.
Well, you see the similarity between my experience and the one you described is that a group of people saw an animal that was from another time or another place, could not exist here. And I know all the animals in the ocean here. This thing, man,
Steller's sea cow is what it was called.
Let me ask you guys this: if this is possible with the portal holes and all that? I did a show one time about Robert Johnson. About apparently the story goes he sold his soul on the crossroads where he was a average guitar player. He was gone for a year. He came back. He was like one of the best guitar players playing the blues around this. So my theory was, what if the crossroads was a portal? He either saw himself from the future, he taught himself how to play within that year, or is it possible that he went through the portal, found himself in another universe that's better than him, and that's the person that came back through the portal? It wasn't him. It was him from another universe. You think that is possible? Because maybe Bigfoot Anon is not Bigfoot Anon. Maybe that's Connor from another multiverse that came back. Is that
very interesting? It's very interesting. I think so. I think that would be.
Robert Johnson is from a parallel universe, but in folklore story, he came back a year later playing better than he ever played before. Now, there's people that had gifts.
That's so like we're all there, man.
But can somebody take himself from this level and go all the way to here? And apparently, they said he made a deal with the devil. Maybe it wasn't the devil. Maybe it was a portal of himself, or he went through a portal and he learned. I'm just saying. That's
very interesting. I think something like that.
That's what we got to.
If you trading places, why not?
Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The Black guy that was in that movie. That's where he got the inspiration for that guy.
Yep. Bob Dylan said in an interview that he sold his soul. He had a deal with the big guy, the Dark Lord, to keep making music and to keep it going. And that was part of the deal. That was part of the bargain. Because he was asked why he was still making music so old, and he said, "I have to do it." Well, it was part of the bargain.
That's like my story.
There's a folklore story that Paul McCartney died, and it's actually his clone that's there. What if
I love that. The acid was hitting real good in the '60s. I love that.
And what if the Paul McCartney you see now is from another portal, another multiverse?
Hey, let me spit a story at you real quick. I don't have answers for that, but I have another story for you about different universes and interesting.
Hey, Tube, can I just say that the aliens saved my life a couple of times, and that's opened my eyes. I should have died a couple of times, but they intervened, and I did not die. And this is kind of why I think I have been working for the aliens. Kind of. I'll just say that much.
That's very interesting.
That's a cliffhanger to end on.
Very interesting. Okay, there's a story. I don't know. This is from like 1600. So like farmland. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but a lot of times in farmland throughout history, people have been seeing airships. Obviously, this is before airships were made. For those who don't know, I think the first airship was actually built, let's say 1900. And then right closely after that, the first airplane was built. In 1904, the Wright brothers had a successful flight of their main flight of their plane. Weird that only 50 years later, we were dropping A-bombs and yada, yada. But that's when flight was really made. So in a lot of sightings before then, it was just it was a mystery, right? So a lot of these airship sightings involved people like swimming through the air, basically they would see a ship floating through the sky as if it was on top of water, but it was in the sky. And then a person would dive off, or a rope would come out, and a person would dive off and swim through the air down towards the land. And sometimes there were crowds of people witnessing this. And sometimes there are stories where they would grab the person and try to hold them down. And the person would beg for their life, like, I'm drowning. They'd swim back up to their ship and then leave. So you got to wonder, like, what's that about? were these people just trying to interpret what they were seeing, or
yeah,
maybe there was a person
or the anchor like hooking onto the building, like an anchor from.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, what if there was just a ship floating over a lake, and there was some weird anomaly in the lake or in the ocean, and suddenly the person, when they were looking down on the ocean, they weren't seeing the ocean; they were seeing the ground for some unknown reason. Well, it'd be very interesting because these people were human-like. They weren't wearing interesting clothes. A lot of the times, they were just normal. But it's a very interesting story.
I like you guys.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. I was just telling Spooky, we never know what kind of conversation we're gonna have when we get on here. But I want to say thank you to our guests. We have 1 minute left of the show on YouTube before we go into the after party. So I want to make sure I thank our guest for today, Jason Hewlett with the Paranormal Network. You guys can find him at youtube.com/ what is it? I think it's just / the Paranormal Network. So make sure you go check him out. And you guys want to run around real quick and let us know what you got coming up next couple days?
I'll start, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
News today at noon. Connor's going to be jumping on. We got some clips on the Bigfoot, paranormal, some Mothman, a couple of Medellas, and a UFO. Yes. And then tomorrow night, my live show is going to be the Young Guns Part 2. What that is I do a show once in a while about the young people of the communities that's making a difference. That's, we need it. I'm older, and it's like seeing people in good hands taking over the community that's going to keep it going. And I like to have a lot of young people jump on and tell us what they're doing so people kind of know who they are and get behind the young people because they're the future of us once we're gone. And that's tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Pacific time.
On Gypsy Road channel?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Bree, what do you got coming up?
Nothing currently except for the after hours SOR that I've been doing. So
yeah, definitely check out Bree on SOR After Hours on Saturdays. You're doing Saturday and Sunday, right?
Correct.
Awesome. Spooky, I'm sure you've got a Chad Smith podcast coming up on Thursday and a Paranormal Chop Shop show on Friday.
Thank you for making that short and sweet. Yes, thank you very much.
And Tupacabra, do you have anything coming up you'd like to plug?
Yeah. I'm dropping a video today on John Ramirez and his recent drops about the hybrids and the hybrid theory. Unfortunately, I don't have the rights to use Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory album as soundtrack, so I'm sorry, guys, in advance.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, man. Thank you guys for coming here, and we will see you Thursday for another episode of the podcast. Thank awesome. You guys. Absolutely, no problem. We'll see you guys. Peace up.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
It sound right, boys.